Chapter 561, The Space-Time Vortex and the Journey to the Magic Dimension. 9 prodigious young wizards, their magical prowess rivaling that of seasoned aurors, gathered with a mission that pushed them to their limits. Astoria, the youngest among them, struggled initially, her grip on her wand tightening as sweat beaded her forehead. John, recognized for his exceptional level's magical power, set a standard that none could match. Astoria, barely at level 4, felt the strain acutely. As their magical connection faltered, Astoria was propelled backward by a forceful blast. "Otto!" Malfoy exclaimed, frustration evident in his voice as he raised his wand. "This is insufferable." John mentioned the necessity of immense magical power to establish the anchor point, someone recalled. Despite Heinrich's 2-year advantage at Durmstrang, a bastion of dark magic and forbidden studies, their collective power seemed insufficient. "We need a more potent force," Percy admitted, tasting blood in his mouth. Among them, he bore the greatest magical strength and, consequently, the heaviest burden. Their determination unwavering, they amplified their magical output, tearing the golden vortex further, though their energy began to wane. Malfoy retrieved a bottle of emerald elixir from his pocket, his resolve hardening. "For John," he declared, downing the potion in one gulp, the bottle shattering in his clenched fist. Percy and the others followed suit, the elixir temporarily boosting their magical reserves. "Heinrich, now!" came the command. United in their effort, they directed a more potent wave of magic into the vortex, widening it further. Yet the backlash was severe, testing their limits. As they struggled to establish the anchor, Malfoy's magical connection weakened visibly. Refusing to be the weakest link, he tapped into his reserves with a fierce determination. Unbeknownst to him, Neville was also pushing himself to the brink. Inspired by Malfoy's resurgence, Neville channeled his dwindling magic into the vortex. The vortex expanded, the symbol of the Ouroboros nearly completing its circle. Exhaustion gripped them as the backlash intensified, miraculously restoring Malfoy's recently trimmed hair. "Is it too late?" Heinrich lamented, their leader still awaiting their success. Malfoy's strength ebbed away, his wand drooping. Before it could fall, a hand caught it. The scent of earth and flowers filled the air as Barty Crouch Jr., disguised as a gardener, lent his power to their cause. His addition tipped the balance, the vortex nearing completion. Yet, a final gap remained, a challenge that seemed insurmountable. "Open it for me," Neville bellowed, his wand flying from his grasp as he drew his sword. Empowered by John to slay demons, the sword's failure was not an option for Neville. His muscles strained under the effort, sweat soaking his clothes as he swung at the vortex. The impact was monumental, Neville's strength against the vortex bending the blade. Yet, it was the vortex that yielded, tearing wider under the assault. Neville's roar echoed, his effort nearing success when an unknown force from the void struck him. The sight of death flashed before his eyes as he was hurled away, bones shattered. The sword, momentarily stuck in the vortex, was eventually ejected as the structure collapsed. Failure seemed imminent, but the backlash had a different plan. The arrival was heralded by a formidable magical force, as thick as a bucket, transforming into lightning. This force, unyielding to any attempt to dispel it, was finally torn asunder by an overwhelming surge of magical power. The Ouroboros completed its closed loop, its anchor point firmly established in this realm. All eyes turned to the source of this power, and to their astonishment, it was him. Even without the Elder Wand, this man remained the most formidable wizard of all time. Dumbledore. From his wand, white smoke billowed, not from any spell, but from the sheer release of magical energy, so intense it nearly consumed the wand itself. Within his aged frame surged a magical force nearing, if not already at, level 8. "Success?" Watson exclaimed, eyeing the golden anchor in disbelief. The sword of silver Wick began to quiver. In the next moment, a line extended from the golden beetle, connecting to the anchor point. The sword erupted into flames, transforming into a colossal fire dragon that soared into the sky before vanishing into the anchor point. In Paris, John utilized the time-space anchor to summon the Sword of Silver Wick, channeling its immense magical power. He unleashed sealed, pure magical energy, which merged into his being, his eyes sparking with purple arcs. Taking a deep breath, he focused on the blue fiend flame that blazed upwards. This power will serve as a perfect reserve for when I initiate the flash, he determined. Without a moment's hesitation, John transformed into a fire dragon, ascending into the sky. He released an hourglass filled with the sands of time, from which silver-white souls burst forth in a starburst pattern, all converging with the sword of Silver Wick's magic. The resulting explosion eclipsed even that within the pyramid, its formidable energy converging into a blinding white light that engulfed numerous tombs, including that of Lestrange, before condensing into a speck and vanishing. Newt and the others could only stare at the vast crater left behind, bewildered by the event's magnitude. John, as he had anticipated, succeeded in his endeavor. The world around him shifted rapidly, images flickering by at an incomprehensible speed until he grasped the golden beetle and everything came to a sudden halt. Finally, going back, John murmured, his form stretching infinitely in a single second. In that brief moment, he witnessed Nagini's tears and Credence's closed eyes. "Send me back," he whispered, pulling on the golden beetle. The marked time anchor reversed the flow of time, elevating John until Earth was a mere blue dot below him. Yet he did not stop there. What happened? John clutched the golden beetle, his brow furrowed in confusion. In the next instant, he found himself amidst a chaotic maelstrom of overlapping scenes, where concepts like distance, space, and direction lost all meaning in this abstract landscape of alternate realities. A terrifying magical force began to erode his body, casting shadows across his face. This is not the original dimension, John realized instantly, his vast knowledge of magic alerting him to the anomaly. A foreign consciousness invaded his mind, but he swiftly employed occlumency to shield himself. A dimension of magic, he concluded, his mind stabilizing as the sorcerer's stone within the sword of Silver Wick glowed red. Looking up, he saw frost covering nearly the entire magical dimension, and then a white wolf appeared. It is unaffected by time, has no concept of space, and is imbued with dark magic, John noted, a chill running down his spine. What was this place? Upon seeing the white wolf, he attempted to replicate his previous tactic, conjuring a Mobius ring with a wave of his wand. This time, however, the Mobius ring exhibited unprecedented power. Magic dimension. Does this mean I can also harness the magic here? John pondered, momentarily taken aback as a steady stream of magical power flowed into him. At that moment, he felt his magical power surge rapidly, embracing the boundless energy of this mysterious dimension. A surge of magical power, potent enough to potentially surpass even Dumbledore, coursed through the air, startling the entity that presided over this realm. "Who are you?" it demanded, its eyes vast and shimmering with a distorted purple light, radiating fear. These were not ordinary eyes. They belonged to the Lord of Dimensions, a being whose existence transcended the confines of time and space, whose form was more immense than a planet. As the sovereign of this dimension, it was unprecedented for him to encounter a visitor capable of absorbing magical power directly from the surroundings. John, feeling the surge of power within him, realized he had stumbled upon what could only be described as a wizard's utopia, though it seemed this paradise was reserved solely for him. He looked up as a shroud of darkness enveloped him. His body perished in one moment, only to be resurrected in the next. Glancing at the time corridor device on his wrist, John understood that without the constraints of magical power, death would never claim him permanently. "It's this place that has drawn me here," John observed, addressing the formidable Dimension Master. "With the next leap, I should be able to return to my original timeline." For John, blessed with the innate ability to absorb magical power automatically, this realm was indeed a paradise. His obliviousness to the gravity of his actions incited the Dimension Master's wrath. John faced death nearly 100 times, yet each instance of recovery rendered the Dimension Master increasingly desensitized to the spectacle. Casting a glance at the white wolf, John offered a smile to the Dimension Master and said, "I'll leave this gift for you. It's too dark here, not quite my style." With that, John activated the golden beetle, and his form vanished from sight, leaving the Lord of Dimensions feeling an inexplicable sense of relief. The sorcerer's presence had been unsettling, threatening even the Master's dominion over his own realm. Absorbing the power of the dark dimension, who is he? The Dimension Master pondered aloud. In the wake of John's departure, the White Wolf broke free, heralding the onset of a calamity destined to bring about an era's end within this dimension. Chapter 562. I'm back inside the Grand Silver Hand Manor. Anticipation hung thick in the air. The moment when the Ouroboros, depicted as serpents biting each other's tails, nearly vanished following the emergence of a golden light, was a spectacle that seemed to defy the laws of nature. The scene, bathed in radiant brilliance, appeared to freeze in time, as if captured by an unseen photographer's shutter. Malfoy's breath hitched, his voice laced with caution, as he asked, "Is this a success?" Heinrich, his gaze fixed intently on the scene, was uncertain of their success. Among those gathered, Dumbledore undoubtedly held the most power. The venerable wizard, who had been looking forward to a respite, found himself ensnared by the taboo once more. "You've achieved something remarkable, John," Dumbledore said, his eyes reflecting a complex mix of emotions as he observed the time anchor. "Taboos have the power to ensnare, yet here you stand." In Dumbledore's eyes, John represented an unparalleled figure, surpassing all others in his dealings with the forbidden. His knowledge, experience, and wisdom far exceeded that of any ordinary individual. Dumbledore, reflecting on his past interactions with the white-haired boy, realized just how formidable John had become. During his tenure as headmaster, Dumbledore often found himself comparing John to Voldemort whenever Snape brought him up in conversation. It wasn't that John resembled Voldemort, but rather Dumbledore subconsciously overlaid Voldemort's image with John's. The realization struck him. The young white-haired wizard he once knew was indeed John. "So it was always you, Joel," Dumbledore mused, a hint of amusement in his voice as he touched his nose, recalling a memory of being punched. Aberforth certainly didn't possess that strength. Suddenly, the frozen moment at the anchor point began to unravel, and the Ouroboros resumed their eternal struggle, devouring each other until only their heads remained. As they continued to shrink, a brilliant burst of golden light erupted, blinding everyone present. A figure emerged from the light, casually twirling his hair. The dark aura surrounding him seemed to pause as he took in his surroundings, a smile spreading across his face. "I am back," he announced, his voice familiar to all. As the golden light faded, all eyes turned to the newcomer. Malfoy, unable to contain his excitement, charged forward, only to find himself hanging upside down in midair, thwarted by an unseen force. John, caught by surprise, found himself supporting a soft body that had collided with him. Looking down, he chuckled, "For you, I should have been gone for less than 2 hours." Daphne, upon hearing this, shot John a look of mock annoyance. In an instant, she pushed him down, and the rest of the Star Club members swarmed him, their playful punishment for his daring venture. Malfoy, still dangling from the chandelier, exclaimed in disbelief, "Why do you still have the magic power to use fuchsia?" He was astounded that Daphne still possessed magical strength despite their ordeal. Amidst the chaos, John laughed along with his friends. Malfoy, noticing something amiss, asked in surprise, "John, your hair has recovered?" Everyone quickly turned their attention to John, whose white hair had reverted to its original black. The group was pleasantly surprised by this unexpected turn of events. "Some unexpected gains," John shrugged, explaining that the dark power from the other dimension had altered his hair color. As the laughter and chatter continued, John's gaze fell upon Dumbledore, and he was taken aback. "How could it be you?" he asked, puzzled. Dumbledore, standing apart from the youthful exuberance, was slightly taken aback by John's reaction. "You wrote to me, John." No, John protested, shaking his head in disbelief. "I intended to write to someone else." "Another person?" Dumbledore pondered, intrigued by John's admission. John had anticipated that their collective magical power might not suffice to successfully establish an Almar core. Thus, he had penned 3 letters, one of which was addressed to his father, requesting his assistance in finding the sword of Silver Wick. John sent the second letter to Fu Rong, requesting her assistance in gathering members for their cause. The third letter, and arguably the most crucial, was a plea for help from someone with formidable magical prowess. He knew of only 3 individuals who could fulfill this requirement: Grindelwald, Dumbledore, and, curiously, another Dumbledore. Despite the apparent oversight in his count, the outcome was fortuitous, resulting in the arrival of the latter Dumbledore. John, assisted to his feet by Heinrich, faced the elderly wizard and expressed his gratitude. "You've aided me, Dumbledore. I owe you a debt of gratitude." Dumbledore, with a gentle shake of his head, responded, "You've helped me as well, John." It was through the Holy Grail that he had managed to survive. Given Dumbledore's wise and benevolent nature, assisting a wayward Hogwarts student was not something he sought recompense for. John, however, was insistent. "This is an exchange of equal value. Please, don't be hasty in your refusal." In America, Nagini's soul had healed, and logically, she should have been able to walk. Yet, for reasons unknown, she seemed to have forgotten how. Confined to a wheelchair, she caressed the wand John had gifted her. It was 11¼ inches long, with a dense texture and excellent resilience. The wand, adorned with a spiral pattern and a sapphire at the tail, was crafted from yew wood and contained a thestral feather core. This wand, symbolizing rebirth, was Nagini's most treasured possession. In her earlier years, Nagini had deeply loved a boy, but she never got the chance to see him again before her complete transformation into a snake. However, she always held on to the memory of a promise they shared, a promise to find each other again. On the wand, a line of words was inscribed, "Celebrate Nagini's rebirth with this gift." Holding the wand close to her heart, Nagini whispered the name of the one who had passed away, Credence, the reckless boy who had given her a second chance at life. Feeling a sense of duty to not let John down, Nagini attempted to stand, trembling with the effort. Suddenly, she felt a gentle support, as if someone was afraid to break her. She froze. A familiar black substance flowed through her, causing her eyes to widen in recognition. "Is it you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Credence?" The black mass slowly took on a human form, revealing a face Nagini knew well, framed by long hair. He wore the mauve dress John had given him, as if he had come for their long-awaited date. "Credence," he said, his voice uncertain. He had fallen into a deep slumber, and upon awakening, had discovered his true lineage. Yet he could not find the one he cherished most. His body deteriorated silently, and he passed away shortly after returning to his father's home in Godric's Hollow, never parting with the pendant he had worn from the start. Now, after many years, the one who was meant to rest eternally had been revived, the pendant with their parting gift gone. Guided by fragmented memories, he found his way back to her. Nagini, tears streaming down her face, covered her mouth in disbelief. "John," she thought, as long-lost memories flooded back. "May you have no regrets this time," the words echoed in her mind. With newfound determination, Nagini moved. Her legs, which had seemed incapable of movement, carried her swiftly into the arms of her beloved, lost to time. "You're back, Credence," she whispered. John had played a pivotal role in this reunion. He had saved Nagini's latter life and fulfilled the regrets of her past. One was supposed to have died long ago, and the other had become a vessel for darkness, meeting their end in the future. Yet their paths had crossed again, turning a tragic end into a moment of reunion. Now, like two birds, each having lost a wing, they had found each other once more. Nagini ran to the boy she had loved dearly, longing for their long-awaited touch. Embraced in love, so genuine and warm, this world knows not of teenagers succumbing to untimely deaths, nor of serpents stripped of their humanity. Here, no creature is condemned as a monster by the masses. In this realm, there exists only a pair, deeply bonded in affection. She, who might have dissipated into a mere wisp of smoke, seeking out the boy she adored, was saved from such a fate. The commanding yet tender-hearted king would not permit such a tragedy to unfold. John Wick, a Slytherin marked by his selfishness, reserves his love exclusively for those he holds dear. An alchemist in pursuit of equivalent exchange, yet he generously rectifies the regrets of his friends without expecting anything in return. Adored by his followers, he stands as a king, yet he does not seek the sanctity revered by all beings. John Wick's love, intense and undivided, is a testament to his character. Unlike the typical portrayal of Slytherins as cold and calculating, John's selfishness stems from a place of deep affection and loyalty. His approach to alchemy, seeking balance yet willingly tipping the scales for the sake of his friends, highlights his unique blend of pragmatism and generosity. While he commands respect and admiration from those who know him, he remains grounded, uninterested in the blind adoration of the masses. His leadership is not about seeking universal approval, but about making meaningful changes for those he cares about. Chapter 563, Dumbledore's Burden. In the quiet village of Godric's Hollow, two figures, one aged and one youthful, made their way through the serene landscape. "What should I call you, John, or—" "Joel?" Dumbledore asked, his tone reminiscent of an old friend reuniting after many years apart. They were stepping into a place laden with sorrow, a place that should have brought Dumbledore some peace, yet John's presence stirred unease within him. "The choice is yours." John replied, his voice light as they approached the cemetery that held memories of past risks. "Use the destiny you favor to find the title you seek. Dumbledore, the guilt from what you've avoided weighs heavily on you," John observed, kneeling beside a tombstone blanketed in blooming white flowers. He gently brushed them aside, revealing a wreath that had grown thick beneath the stone. "How long has it been since you last visited?" Caught in a moment of reflection, Dumbledore's eyes glazed over. "It's been too long," he murmured. "You should have realized. Avoiding it only led to further loss," John said, his gaze softening as he stood and extended his left hand. The earth around the grave parted, and the coffin, cradled by white flowers, began to ascend. "I don't understand," Dumbledore admitted, his gaze fixed on the rising white coffin. "Why are you doing this? How?" John's explanation of equivalent exchange left Dumbledore with a complex mix of emotions. He understood he couldn't refuse, and he found himself willing to plead with the young man who dared to break taboos. Beneath this coffin lay the embodiment of Dumbledore's lifelong guilt, his evasion of heart and responsibility, letting his beloved rest in eternal sleep, his heart forever fractured. The revered Dumbledore, lover of the world, had failed as a brother. How? Dumbledore repeated, seeking clarity. John shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "Dumbledore, magic, like alchemy, demands a price." He locked eyes with Dumbledore, his expression stoic. "Are you wondering what dark magic that Slytherin used to defy the taboo?" "Yes, I am," Dumbledore confessed, his voice laden with honesty. "You've always been a source of surprise, always eluding my understanding." "My soul, the great Dumbledore," John stated, his voice carrying a hint of indifference. "Soul," Dumbledore echoed, puzzled. "Yes, soul." John traced his fingers over his heart, a grin forming. "A piece is missing here. If you're familiar with secrets of advanced dark arts, you'd know creating Horcruxes involves sacrificing a piece of the soul." "Reviving the dead is no simple feat, even for me," John continued. "But Voldemort's methods reminded me of a way to keep someone alive without their body." As Dumbledore listened, his eyes wide with shock, John spoke with unsettling calmness. "So I split my soul, creating a Horcrux for her. My soul is no longer whole, Dumbledore." Dumbledore staggered back, murmuring, "Why, John? Why would you divide your soul?" "Perhaps it was her flower, her chaotic yet sincere kindness, those eyes willing to trust me," John mused. "Through equivalent exchange, I struck a deal with her." The coffin lid slowly opened, revealing the skeletal remains of a young girl, yet the pure, flawless white flower beside her remained untouched. John picked up the flower, his voice soft. Ironically, this purest of flowers was nurtured with the darkest of magics. "No," Dumbledore interjected, his voice laden with guilt. "That flower remains pure and innocent, a symbol of voluntary sacrifice." John, an expert in soul magic, understood the consequences of a fractured soul better than anyone. Unlike Voldemort, who created Horcruxes through the deaths of others, John chose a different path. He split his own soul, using it to create a Horcrux for Ariana. "Do you recall Tom's spell?" John mused aloud. "Blood of the enemy, bone of the father, flesh of the servant." But Ariana was different. She bore no grudge. In her final moments, she still loved you, loved. John's voice trailed off as he produced a golden scale from his pocket, a symbol of the weighty choices and sacrifices made in the name of love and redemption. John placed a small bag down and turned to face Dumbledore, who was already moved to tears. Extending his hand, he caught a single tear from Dumbledore's beard. The tear fell onto one end of a golden scale, causing it to tilt. "Guilty," he declared, referencing an animated portrait taken from the Hogshead Tavern. "Pity," John murmured, pointing to his own head before slowly extracting a strand of silver-white memory. "Love." He placed these three items on the scale, then added a white flower to the opposite side. A magical moment ensued as the scale, initially tilted, began to balance itself, the weight of the flower seemingly counteracting the other side. John watched in silence until equilibrium was achieved. Holding a scepter that symbolized resurrection, John recited ancient, obscure incantations. The golden scepter gradually melted into a liquid gold that flowed into the coffin below. In a miraculous transformation, the dry bones within the coffin quickly dissolved and merged with the liquid gold. John then took out a bottle, uncorked it, and sprinkled soil into the coffin, declaring, "The land of the first birthplace." He plucked one of the white flowers surrounding the tomb, tossing it in as well. The flower of the final residence. Before him, a body indistinguishable from Ariana's materialized in the coffin. This spell, originally intended for the resurrection of the despicable High Urbo, proved to be a simpler solution for John, sparing him the effort of devising an alternative method. "And lastly," John said, gazing at Ariana's body, he picked up the white flower of the Horcrux and blew gently on it, whispering, "Soul." The flower disintegrated into petals that flew towards Ariana. A profound silence enveloped the scene until, at last, the girl's eyelashes fluttered. Bathed in the twilight, her eyes opened, revealing a sky-blue gaze. Decades of regret and nearly a century of guilt overwhelmed even the most stoic of wizards. Dumbledore, tears streaming down his face, was too moved to clearly see his sister's expression. Yet he knew Ariana was truly back, and the weight of a century's remorse was lifted in that moment. Overcome with emotion, he wept openly, finally allowing himself to indulge in the love for his family he had restrained for so long. Ariana, confused by her surroundings, noticed the elderly man before her gaze settled on John. Extending her hand as she once did, John hesitated before offering his wand. "Good afternoon, Ariana," he greeted. Ariana, sensing a change, mustered her courage and replied, "Afternoon, Joel." The setting sun cast an orange glow on John's face as he introduced himself. "John Wick. Hello, Ariana." Ariana, whose life was cut short twice, first at the age of 6 and then at 14, was reborn at the age of 112. John, reflecting on their shared past, felt a deep connection to her. Nagini, releasing Credence's hand, approached John and embraced him. "What a gentle king," she said through tears. Her voice, filled with concern, asked, "Are you tired, my king?" John, touched by her words, admitted to feeling a bit weary. Nagini's care offered him a comfort distinct from maternal love, a sanctuary where he could let go of his burdens and find peace. Disregarding Dumbledore's emotional display, John's attention shifted to Credence. With a familiar tone, he said, "Credence, I think I'm late. Perhaps I should call you Dumbledore." He chuckled at the thought of 3 Dumbledores, creating confusion with their identical names. Closing his eyes, John leaned into Nagini's embrace, allowing himself a moment of rest. Credence, moved by the scene, knelt and pledged his loyalty to John, declaring his readiness to follow him, now stronger than before. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he bowed his head, a gesture he had never once considered in Grindelwald's presence. Thoughts of Dumbledore swirled in his mind, a mix of longing, regret, and a newfound reverence. It was as if, in this moment of reflection, he sought forgiveness, a sense of belonging, and a pillar of support in the aftermath of his rebirth. This was not just an act of submission, but a profound realization of his past mistakes and a silent plea for redemption. In the fading light, his thoughts lingered on Dumbledore, a symbol of what he had lost and what he hoped to regain. Chapter 564, a new addition to the family. John usually needed only 2 hours of sleep to recover, but this time he decided to indulge in the rare luxury of free time and took a short vacation for himself. During this period, his pets created a small commotion. Basil and Riddle, his 2 owls, were disturbed as Tom, the family cat, persistently attacked the cabinet they were perched on, eventually breaking through it. This led to a comical chase around the neighborhood, with Basil furiously pursuing Tom until Mrs. Wick intervened, saving Tom from a potential concussion. Meanwhile, Watson peeked through the blinds, observing the government cars parked outside. He noticed his wife returning, balancing a dog in one hand and an owl in the other. "What's that?" he asked, referring to the animals she was carrying. Mrs. Wick, noticing the cars, was informed by Watson that they were from the government, but he reassured her he could handle it. The conversation shifted to John, who was still asleep. Mrs. Wick's glare at the mention of their son's prolonged slumber silenced Watson. Their marriage, though generally harmonious, was strained by the dangers John faced. It had been less than a month since John's last disappearance from Hogwarts, during which he had narrowly escaped death twice. Mrs. Wick, protective as ever, was prepared to go to great lengths to ensure her son's safety. The family gathered around the television, where a young girl, Ariana, was engrossed in a cartoon, interacting with it through a little bear doll. Mrs. Wick, watching her with affection, expressed her long-held desire for a daughter. Despite their miraculous luck in having John, their efforts for a second child had been in vain. However, Ariana's arrival rekindled Mrs. Wick's maternal aspirations. Watson, understanding his wife's wishes, suggested they surprise John with a new sister. Ariana's presence in their home was no accident. Dumbledore, aware of his inability to provide for Ariana and feeling guilty for his past failures, believed John's home to be the best place for her. He trusted that John, familiar with the magical world and its dangers, would be a protective guardian. When John finally emerged on the third day, he was greeted with the news of his new adoptive sister, Ariana Dumbledore Wick. Stunned, he examined the adoption documents, seeking confirmation of this unexpected development. Watson, slightly reproachful, reminded John that he was the one who brought Ariana home, implying it was their duty to officially welcome her into the family. John, overwhelmed and speechless, turned to Ariana, who approached him curiously. The moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one filled with the promise of familial bonds and the challenges of integrating Ariana into their unique world. Watson stood frozen, his eyes wide in disbelief. "She's older than me?" he finally managed to utter, his voice laced with incredulity. Ariana, the girl in question, looked down, her expression one of dejection. The revelation of her true age, 1884, had taken everyone by surprise, especially Watson, who struggled to reconcile the image of the young girl before him with that of a century-old woman. John, Watson's son, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of amusement and concern. He knew his father well enough to suspect that Watson had exploited his connections to facilitate the adoption, despite the glaring anomaly in Ariana's age. "The wizarding world is full of possibilities," John remarked, trying to lighten the mood. The conversation shifted as John addressed Ariana directly, his tone gentle yet serious. "I didn't mean to abandon you, Ariana," he said, acknowledging her feelings of isolation and fear. Ariana's response, a simple yet heartfelt elder brother, brought a smile to everyone's faces, even as Watson and Mrs. Wick, John's parents, playfully exaggerated their emotional reactions. John's decision to adopt Ariana was not made lightly. He recognized the potential dangers and challenges that lay ahead, especially given Ariana's unique abilities as an obscurial. Unlike others, John possessed the rare ability to control and harness the dark force within him, a skill he hoped to teach Ariana to help her manage her own powers. As a gesture of his commitment to her well-being, John presented Ariana with a magical bracelet crafted from Ravenclaw's diadem and the golden mask of wisdom. This gift, he explained, would aid in her recovery and help suppress the dark consciousness that threatened to overwhelm her. Watson and Mrs. Wick exchanged knowing looks, understanding the significance of John's actions. They were aware of his plans to create soul potions, a risky endeavor that involved splitting his own soul. Yet, they also knew that John's unique abilities and the magical artifacts at his disposal offered a glimmer of hope for Ariana's future. As the family came together, united in their determination to support Ariana, it was clear that they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With love, understanding, and a touch of magic, they were ready to embark on a journey of healing and discovery, one that promised to change their lives forever. After a period of struggle due to financial constraints, John and his family found themselves in a better position. The need for a soul potion for Ariana was pressing, not just for her, but for John himself, who had suffered alongside her. In a bold move to address their needs, John decided to leverage the resources at Silverhand Manor, particularly the Dementor farm he had innovatively automated. This farm, a grim but necessary venture, allowed for the controlled harvesting of Dementors. John was cautious, reducing the frequency of harvests to maintain balance, and occasionally using the unfortunate fate of a dark wizard to sustain the Dementor population. Upon returning from Silverhand Manor, John was met with an alarming discovery. Ariana was missing. His parents and Tom were nowhere to be seen either, sparking a moment of panic. However, as night fell, his worries were quickly dispelled by the sound of a car parking outside and the ensuing laughter that filled the air. John watched as Watson emerged from the car, laden with bags of various sizes, among which was a gigantic stuffed bear. Ariana's eyes were fixed on the bear, her joy unmistakable as she embraced it. The sight of the happy couple, laden with their purchases from a department store, brought a smile to John's face. The thought of an obscurial wandering into a Muggle department store would surely send shivers down the spine of anyone at the Ministry of Magic. But for John, the happiness of his sister was paramount. The joy radiating from Ariana was a balm to John's soul, a reminder of the simple pleasures that life could offer, despite the shadows that often loomed over them. The day's events, from the strategic management of the Dementor farm to the unexpected family outing, underscored the complex tapestry of their lives, woven with threads of darkness and light, despair and hope, fear and love. Chapter 565, The Silver Hand Branch Extends a Favor. Having multiple younger sisters never significantly impacted John. For the past 3 days, he had been relatively idle, his activities limited to repairing a cabinet and sorting through his correspondence. One letter, in particular, caught his attention, a missive from the French Minister for Magic. John had initially planned to expand his business into France, a plan that would have come to fruition had he not been deceived by Death's grandson. Despite the setback, the period wasn't entirely devoid of benefits. His hair had reverted to its natural black, and his vision had improved. John found himself pondering over the dark dimension he had encountered. It was a realm that could be described as a paradise unto itself. However, the likelihood of crossing dimensions was a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence, leaving John with a sense of regret. During his time there, he had faced a white wolf, a creature capable of world destruction. Such a threat was too great for even the Witcher world to handle, let alone John. Charles Rowland has extended a sincere invitation. It would be courteous to accept his offer, John mused, twirling his ring thoughtfully. The French Ministry of Magic's invitation undoubtedly came with certain concessions. It appears that the Delacour family and others have exerted considerable effort in this matter. It's only right that I reciprocate. John knew that Charles Rowland, the outgoing Minister of Magic, wasn't solely responsible for this initiative. The Delacour family and Madame Maxime had provided covert support. The Delacours were closely allied with John, and Madame Maxime's connection stemmed from John's time at her school and his apprenticeship under Nicolas Flamel. Given his tutelage under the legendary French alchemist, John held a unique position within the French magical community. The situation in the United States is stable. Now, it's time to expand our influence into Europe, John contemplated, moving on to other letters. In Germany, Ludwig has offered his assistance in dealing with the Ministry of Magic. However, that's where Grindelwald's forces are deeply entrenched. Progress would be made one step at a time, with France as the starting point. Heinrich and Kim should be heading to France soon, John considered. He had thought about sending Heinrich back to school, especially since Durmstrang was now under the Edgar family's influence. However, Heinrich felt no need to return, believing his magical skills were sufficient for graduation. The task of establishing a French branch would fall to them. Heinrich, as John's deputy, and Kim, with her natural aptitude for management demonstrated at the American branch, were well suited for the job. John planned for Kim to oversee the silver hand shops in various countries. Once the French branch was operational, Kim would manage it for some time, mirroring the strategy employed in America. After sealing the letter to France, John spoke to himself. Since Minister Rowland is keen on collaboration, I'm happy to demonstrate the advantages of partnering with us. He penned an invitation letter and handed it to Riddle, his owl, along with a small dried fish. Deliver this to Charles Rowland, and if anyone causes trouble, feel free to peck at them. Riddle nodded in understanding. Basil, another owl, perked up at the mention of pecking people, stepping forward eagerly. Forget it, Basil. After the last incident at Old Batty's house, I had to cover the medical expenses, John chided, tapping Basil on the head. Basil's domineering nature was a mystery to John, who gently pushed the owl's wing away. Meanwhile, Kiki, another owl, was caught trying to sneak a dried fish from the drawer. Caught in the act, Kiki froze, realizing the gravity of her mischief. As feathers fluttered in the background, John turned away, pretending not to notice, allowing Kiki a moment of reprieve. In the grip of fate, Basil, with a single paw, asserted his dominance over Cheeky by stepping onto the table. His wings ed Cheeky's head repeatedly, causing her eyes to bulge in surprise. Thus, Tom became the second unfortunate soul to endure Basil's bullying. Tom, lying sprawled on the floor, could only comment indifferently, "That has nothing to do with me." At that moment, Ariana, now dressed in casual girl's attire, gently prodded Tom's stomach, finding amusement in his exaggerated, submissive expression and lolling tongue. Meanwhile, at Silverhand Manor, John was hosting old Barty. "You should try this, a beverage from the Muggle world," John suggested, offering a fizzing bottle of Coke to Barty Sr., who eyed the dark, bubbling liquid with suspicion, as if it were poison. After a cautious sip, the unfamiliar sensation of bubbles made him frown, though he managed not to spit it out. "Muggle inventions are becoming increasingly bizarre," Barty Sr. remarked. John, with a shrug, replied, "From a Muggle standpoint, wizarding artifacts are far stranger." He added nonchalantly, "My parents bought a lot of these." "I almost forgot. Your parents are Muggles," Barty Sr. said, his tone shifting as he hesitated, revealing his curiosity about why Muggles seemed more adept at combating dark creatures than wizards, and who among them dared to ride fire dragons, a feat not even wizards dared attempt. "The new branch of Johnny Silverhand is set up in France, isn't it?" Barty Sr. inquired, changing the subject. John, detecting the underlying concern, responded with a light chuckle, "Are you warning me? Silverhand's ambitions aren't confined to one country." "Of course not. Charles Rowland has been in touch with me. He's a seasoned politician," Barty Sr. continued, ignoring John's jest. "He's hoping your involvement will extend his tenure in office." "People are inherently greedy, including him," John observed. Charles Rowland's political maneuvers had propelled him to power, but without significant achievements, his position remained precarious. "Last year, he sought me out to inquire about you," Barty Sr. shared, taking another sip of Coca-Cola before setting it aside with a grimace. "He's been watching you for a while, adept at sailing with the wind." "Then he should know whom to align with," John remarked with a smile. Despite finding such individuals irksome, John acknowledged their usefulness in furthering his own goals. "He's willing to make concessions for Silverhand's benefit," John noted, picking up his teacup, "and I'm inclined to help him secure a longer term in office." "You haven't changed a bit. It's reassuring to see you're still the same, even after returning to school," Barty Sr. commented, eyeing John's choice of beverage with a hint of disapproval, as if to say, "You have tea, and you offer me this? Don't you know tea is a symbol of British culture, even among wizards?" John, understanding the unspoken critique, replied, "Striving for the ordinary is not my ambition, old Barty." Their conversation shifted to the amusement park, a venture spearheaded by Silverhand and supported by the Ministry of Magic. "This project presents a great opportunity, doesn't it?" John mused, setting down his teacup. "It's a chance for the Ministries of Magic worldwide to witness the benefits brought by Silverhand, thereby reducing their apprehensions." Barty Sr. voiced his concern. "Opening an amusement park near the werewolf community is a bold move." "Exposing more people to werewolves can help humanize them," John explained thoughtfully. "Werewolves are numerous worldwide." Barty Sr., who had the support of the werewolf community and was keen on improving their status, reflected on John's words. "In my latest proposal, I renamed the Werewolf Capture Unit to the Werewolf Affairs Office," he shared. "If they can ensure the amusement park's safety and prevent any disturbances from werewolves, the Ministry of Magic Council might entrust them with full responsibility for werewolf matters." This proposal signified a significant step towards integrating werewolves more fully into wizarding society. In a groundbreaking move, the Ministry of Magie has taken significant steps to return autonomy to werewolves, marking a pivotal moment in the improvement of their status within the magical community. This new legislation ensures that incidents involving werewolves harming individuals will be addressed through a specialized werewolf audit process. Furthermore, it establishes a crucial legal boundary. Wizards are now prohibited from killing werewolves indiscriminately, and the act of killing magical creatures is no longer a chargeable offense for wizards. John, observing these changes, feels a deep sense of satisfaction. The reforms represent a substantial shift from the past, granting werewolves increased authority and rights. This evolution in policy is particularly beneficial to individuals like Old Batty and John himself, who have long advocated for the rights and better treatment of werewolves within the magical community. They'll manage, John confidently asserts, reflecting on the resilience and adaptability of the werewolf community in the face of these new changes. His optimism is not unfounded. The reforms not only promise a more equitable society for werewolves, but also signify a step towards a more inclusive and understanding magical world. Chapter 566, Amusement Park and Behind-the-Scenes Calculations. The long-awaited amusement park finally opened its gates to the public, marking a significant milestone. Spanning an area as vast as Hogwarts itself, the park was meticulously divided into several themed zones: the animal area, plant area, aurora area, limit area, flight area, and celestial body area. Among these, the Quidditch pitch, comparable in size to a World Cup stadium, stood out as a centerpiece, destined to host an internal Quidditch match later on. Quidditch, the Wizarding World's counterpart to Muggle football, traditionally had a peculiar competition system focused primarily on qualifying for the World Cup. Recognizing the need for a more inclusive and engaging format, the John United Sports Division introduced a new classification system. Quidditch teams were now categorized into 3 levels: top wizards, senior wizards, and junior wizards, with promotion and relegation rules designed to maintain a competitive league structure. This revamped system, set to be officially implemented in August, aimed to enhance the spectator experience and broaden the appeal of the game. The amusement park also became a melting pot of culinary delights, featuring an array of dishes from both the magical and Muggle worlds. Additionally, live bands roamed the park, occasionally unveiling surprise performances, adding to the festive atmosphere. John, enjoying an ice cream, reflected on the complexities of bringing such a project to fruition. "It is convenient to seek profit from the government," he mused. The involvement of Johnny the Silverhand alone would not have sufficed. The successful implementation of the Quidditch events, for example, required collaboration with the Department of Magical Sports and Games, and was limited to national scope. As John observed the scene, he noticed a group of magic ministers from various countries scrutinizing the park. Their initial skepticism soon gave way to astonishment, particularly upon learning about the Quidditch competition reforms. Recognizing the potential for increased fame and commercial value, they saw opportunities for their respective countries. Charles Rolland, the French Minister of Magic, couldn't help but admire John's visionary approach. The prospect of a permanent World Cup-level stadium promised significant financial benefits, not just from ticket sales, but as a lasting achievement for the Ministry of Magic. Currently, only Yinshou Fengshan Construction Company possessed the capability to erect such marvels, making the prospect of collaboration even more enticing. However, concerns arose, notably from the German minister, regarding the park's proximity to a known werewolf gathering area. "Werewolves are dangerous magical creatures," he cautioned, highlighting the potential risk to visitors. Despite the introduction of wolfsbane potion, the stigma surrounding werewolves persisted. Old Batty, addressing the concern, assured everyone of the preparedness for any emergencies, suggesting that the focus should now shift to the opening ceremony. The ceremony itself was a spectacle of unprecedented grandeur. Fireworks from Weasley's Wizard Wheezes lit up the sky, and a fire dragon soared towards the stands, eliciting gasps and applause from the crowd. The event not only celebrated the opening of the amusement park, but also symbolized the collaborative efforts and behind-the-scenes calculations that made it possible. Tens of thousands of wizards from around the globe gathered for the grand opening, transforming the event into a melting pot of magical cultures and information. The sky was adorned with candy balloons, and chocolate rained down, filling the air with a delightful sweetness. A broomstick tumbled from the sky, landing softly on the cotton-like ground, a testament to the park's enchantment that ensured even a fall could be a joyous experience. The amusement park was divided into various zones, each offering a unique adventure. The Aurora area mesmerized visitors with its dreamy landscapes, while the animal area thrilled with its exciting encounters. Adventurers could navigate the twists and turns of the plant area's maze, earning rewards upon completion. The Celestial Body area offered a glimpse into the vastness of the universe, inviting guests to marvel at the ever-changing stars. For those seeking a rush, the Limit Zone challenged the senses with its exhilarating experiences. These attractions captivated the wizards, making them reluctant to leave. Outside the amusement park, a group of werewolves watched with envy and a hint of resentment. Their gaze was fixed on the joy and wonder within, a world they felt barred from. As the opening ceremony concluded, a subtle shift occurred between the German Minister of Magic and an individual known as Old Barty. The minister's expression darkened, catching Barty's attention. Despite his initial concern, the minister regained his composure, but the outcome he had hoped for remained elusive. Later, Barty Sr. received a concerning message from Sophie and exited the park with a grim expression. They were confronted by a group of subdued werewolves, identified by Zophi as outsiders attempting to infiltrate the park. John, joining the conversation, remarked on the situation with a lightness that belied the gravity of their discovery. "We are not without enemies," he stated, suggesting that someone was attempting to use the werewolves as pawns in a larger scheme. Old Barty was relieved that Zophi and the others had thwarted a potential disaster. He recognized the wisdom in using werewolves to guard against their own kind, understanding that they were uniquely equipped to sense and avert danger. Motivated by the day's events, Barty Sr. decided to accelerate the implementation of a werewolf versus werewolf strategy. As the day ended, wizards departed the amusement park using portkeys, their minds filled with memories of the magical experiences they had enjoyed. News of the Silverhand Amusement Park's grand opening spread rapidly through the magical world, propelled by newspaper articles adorned with vivid photographs. The park quickly became a topic of conversation, drawing visitors eager to experience its wonders firsthand. The Weasley twins found themselves overwhelmed by the park's success, enlisting Ron and Bill to assist with their bustling merchandise booth. Amidst the chaos, Fred inadvertently mentioned Bill's strained relationship with Fleur, causing a moment of discomfort. Attempting to lighten the mood, Fred handed Bill a bag of dragon-roasted chestnuts, not for Bill, but for a customer known as Fat Dunn. The interaction ended in tears for the frightened customer and laughter among the Weasleys, with Ron bearing the brunt of the day's labor as he managed a crowd of eager children. Chapter 567, Opening a Shop. John's vacation turned out to be the most profitable period of his life. While others enjoyed a mere 2-month break, he found himself benefiting from an extended stay of at least half a year. As time ticked away, John mused to himself, "By my calculations, I should have already." He trailed off, realizing that without disclosure, his secret would remain his alone. After addressing the logistics of opening an amusement park, John decided to return home by an unconventional route. Stepping out of the taxi, he frowned upon noticing several unfamiliar cars parked outside his house. From one of these vehicles, a pair of sharp eyes scrutinized him closely. Unperturbed, John made his way home. Inside Wick's house, Watson found himself under the intense gaze of a man named Mycroft, an epitome of British nobility with his meticulous attire and demeanor. Mycroft, known for his high intellect, appeared visibly insulted by Watson's explanation of recent events. "So, you're telling me that the Nigerian gang, armed with a terrorist weapon, attempted to intercept you, only to lose control and suffer the consequences themselves?" Mycroft inquired, his voice laced with disbelief. Watson averted his gaze, replying, "Yes, that's exactly what happened, Mycroft." Mycroft took a deep breath, his patience thinning. "Watson, you're a smart man. You must realize who transformed this terrorist attack into a mere playing with fire scenario, alerting the cabinet in the process. You nearly caused the destruction of the entire Tower of London." Watson's explanation began to falter. "It was the Nigerian gang," he started, but his voice trailed off under Mycroft's impatient glare. "Your hotel is about to open. I expect nothing but the truth from you," Mycroft pressed, his tone becoming more authoritative. "The government is far more concerned about a terrorist wielding a nuclear bomb than the underground forces." Watson pondered for a moment before making a decisive choice to be candid with Mycroft. "All right, I'll tell you the truth," he said, his voice carrying a weight of seriousness that hadn't been there before. Mycroft, sensing the gravity of the moment, nodded for Watson to continue. Taking a deep breath, Watson began. "Nigeria was involved in the covert development of a weapon." Mycroft. Watson was abruptly cut off by Mycroft, whose frustration was palpable. Mycroft fought the urge to throw the vase on the table at Watson, instead threatening, "I need the truth, Watson." With an air of innocence, Watson insisted, "What I've told you is the truth. Before venturing into the hotel business, my expertise was in finance, not in creating terrorist weapons. And with the hotel opening soon, I've invited many people to generate buzz." Mycroft scoffed. "I wasn't aware your business ventures were so extensive." Watson smiled, dismissing the skepticism. "They're all minor ventures. My background is in finance, so that's where my strategies originate." He tapped his temple, indicating his mind. "The people I'm dealing with aren't fools. They understand the need for adaptation. The influence of the state is growing, and the days of unchecked freedom are over." Watson continued, his gaze now steady and confident. "Those who refuse to adapt are merely low-level thugs. We're establishing a new order, one that operates within the constraints of the law. For change to occur, there needs to be a gray area to serve as a buffer between the black and white. I'm willing to be that gray," Watson declared, a chuckle escaping him. "Those resistant to change will be left behind. We'll enforce the rules more swiftly than the police." Mycroft responded coldly. "Do you believe you can change the entire world, Watson? Do you possess such capability?" Watson didn't directly answer. Instead, he listed countries: America, Russia, Japan, Italy, China. As he raised his head, the once submissive Watson revealed a new determination, hinting at ambitions that extended far beyond London's underground. Watson had become known as the Underground President, a title he wore with a sly grin. "There are only 12 seats at the top, and they're either groveling beneath the high table or perched atop it," he said with a smirk. "I may not have conventional power, Minister," he continued, his smile taking on a malevolent edge, "but in the world of monopoly business, profit is the ultimate power, and a monopoly never loses money." Mycroft remained silent, contemplating. The notion of an underground president in London was daunting enough, but 12. The implications were staggering. "Do you really think you're the only one watching me?" Watson asked, a smile playing on his lips as he casually waved his fingers. "FBI, GRU, Federal Intelligence Service, External Security Service. They're all keeping tabs on me. To them, I'm an open book, everything about me stored in their databases. But without me," he paused, tapping his chin thoughtfully, "this fragile order we've finally established would crumble." The room fell into an eerie silence, so profound that even the sound of falling petals seemed loud. Mycroft stared at Watson, realizing that the man he thought he had under his control had been orchestrating far more than he had imagined. "I remember you weren't this cunning," Mycroft remarked. "People change, Mycroft," Watson replied with a shrug. "Becoming a father and a husband has reshaped my priorities. Men, in particular, must tread carefully." Just then, the phone rang, cutting through the tense atmosphere. Watson glanced at it and gestured for Mycroft to answer. "It's for you, Minister." Mycroft picked up the phone, and a familiar voice on the other end said, "Mycroft." It was the head of a security department. Mycroft glanced at Watson before responding. "For Watson Wick?" "Yes, we need him, Mycroft." With a click, Mycroft hung up the phone. He straightened his vest, stood up, and looked down at Watson with a mixture of respect and disdain. "I must admit, the New World Order has underestimated you," he said, extending his hand. "It's been quite the game." Watson rose to meet him, shaking his hand. "I've done what I could. Being a transparent person will drive you mad," Mycroft said, his gaze intense. "No secrets, no privacy. Everywhere you go, you might be encountering an agent from some country, with countless eyes watching you. This means you can no longer trust anyone, not even your own family," Mycroft added, admiring Watson's resolve. Watson had turned himself into a neutral entity, navigating the dangerous terrain between the lawful and the lawless. "Is it worth it?" Mycroft questioned, hinting that surrendering the weapon might have made Watson's life easier. But Watson simply smiled. "The hotel opens tomorrow. You should try the shrimp," he said, changing the subject. "I will. I hope it's not too saucy. My belt is already tight," Mycroft replied, acknowledging his defeat in this confrontation. Watson had become a formidable player, no longer easily manipulated. Suddenly, Mycroft asked, "I haven't seen your son, have I?" At that moment, the door opened, and John walked in, greeting Mycroft with a bright smile. "Hello, my name is John Wick. I hope you enjoy your meal at the hotel." The instant Mycroft laid eyes on John, he realized this young man wouldn't be easy to control either. In just a few seconds, his gaze analyzed John, concluding that he was dealing with someone unpredictable. "You remind me of my younger siblings," Mycroft said, trying to find common ground. "Then you must have a very close relationship with them," John replied, his tone polite yet distant. "No, quite the opposite," Mycroft admitted. He turned to Watson. "My brother would find you interesting, Watson." "Sorry, I'm married," Watson responded, wary of Mycroft's intentions. Mycroft's expression darkened as he left the room, noticing his driver's pale face. "That's not a person," he thought, realizing the depth of the challenge Watson and his son posed. "Is it?" The driver, an MI6 agent, gripped the steering wheel tightly. The past few minutes had been a whirlwind, the details of which were known only to him. Mycroft, observing the boy waving at him through the car window, muttered to himself, "I'm all too familiar with the scent of madness." To see 1 or 2 steps ahead of the average person is to be a genius. But to see 8 or 9 steps ahead, that's the realm of madness. "New file," he announced decisively. "Name, John Wick, codename Zero." The streets of London blurred past the car window, each turn and twist taking them deeper into a world where the lines between sanity and madness, genius and insanity, were perilously thin. Mycroft's mind was a fortress of logic and calculation, yet even he couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that this new case, this John Wick, was unlike anything they had encountered before. As the car sped through the city, the agent at the wheel remained silent, his focus unwavering. The tension in the air was palpable, a silent testament to the gravity of their mission. Mycroft, ever the strategist, was already piecing together the puzzle, his thoughts racing ahead. "Prepare the briefing room," Mycroft instructed, his voice calm yet commanding. "I want every piece of information on this John Wick. Background, affiliations, known associates. Leave no stone unturned." The car came to a smooth stop outside the MI6 headquarters, a fortress of secrets and shadows. As Mycroft stepped out, the weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders. This was more than just a new file. It was a dive into the unknown, a challenge to the very limits of their understanding. And so, with the name John Wick echoing in his mind, Mycroft Holmes ventured into the heart of the storm, ready to confront whatever madness lay ahead. Chapter 568, Poor Tom, A Great Transformation. I never expected to be labeled a lunatic shortly after an encounter. John pondered over his father's legacy, a topic that seemed to weigh heavily on his mind. "So, you've opened not just 1, but 12? He mused during dinner, as he tore pieces of bread to feed Basil. Ariana, seated next to him, mimicked his actions, offering salad and kale to Kiki. Kiki, a mighty fire dragon, was too proud to protest, despite his disdain for the vegetarian fare. Chewing the greens sullenly, he couldn't help but feel defeated. The power emanating from the little girl beside him was enough to intimidate even a dragon. Watson, attempting to maintain his dignity, coughed awkwardly. John, noticing Watson's bruised ego, commented lightly, "I suppose you'll have at least 100 pairs of eyes scrutinizing you every time you step outside from now on." "Isn't that more your concern?" Watson retorted, his tone serious. "Don't worry, my father will ensure your magic remains a secret." Watson's loyalty touched John deeply, despite the awkwardness of the conversation. "There's something known as the forgetting curse," John mentioned, contemplating a solution. "No, that would be too risky," Watson interjected, shaking his head. "I know Mycroft. He's incredibly astute, akin to a walking memory palace. He'd notice something amiss in an instant." "Perhaps I was too hasty in my suggestion," John conceded. "I'll find a way to manage our interactions with the non-magical world." He understood the lengths to which his father had gone to protect their secret. For individuals as perceptive as Mycroft, the Oblivion Curse was not a viable option. "It's unfortunate that I can't accompany you to school," Watson expressed, a hint of regret in his voice. Being under constant surveillance, he knew too well the discomfort of being watched by countless eyes. Governments worldwide were in a dilemma over him. They neither wished for his demise nor for him to live too comfortably. As Watson had predicted, agents from various intelligence agencies began to appear, though they were hardly a match for John's keen perception. Despite their best efforts to blend in, their thoughts betrayed them. The hotel's opening was a quiet affair, almost as if the building had emerged from the ground overnight. Its first guests were dignitaries from the political sphere, each driven by their own selfish motives, yet willing to support Watson in exchange for certain immunities. These agreements ensured their activities would remain off the hotel's radar, providing them a sanctuary of sorts. As the holidays gradually passed, John focused on fulfilling a promise. He took Ariana to Silverhand Manor, instructing the security guards to leave them in privacy. He then produced a bottle of milky white potion, the Soul Potion, and reassured Ariana, "Trust me." Hesitant at first, Ariana eventually allowed John to remove the crown bracelet, a symbol of wisdom that had been protecting her from the darkness that sought to corrupt her heart. Her emotions, now raw and unguarded, surged with fear at the sight of the potion. "It's okay, Ariana," John encouraged gently. "This can heal you." Bolstered by John's reassurance, Ariana bravely drank the potion. Instantly, dark energy erupted from her body, unleashing a scream and a powerful magical shockwave that was contained only by a barrier John hastily erected. The dark energy targeted John, the only living being in its path, but he countered it with his own darkness, transforming it into a protective shield. John then used psychic magic to calm Ariana's tumultuous emotions, his voice echoing in her mind, "Learn to control it, not be controlled by it." As the battle against the dark forces raged on, John stood at the epicenter of destruction, a beacon of resilience amidst the chaos. Finally, just as the Silverhand Manor teetered on the brink of annihilation, Ariana awoke, her confusion evident as she faced John, who extended his hand towards her, a silent promise of protection and guidance. "Ari," Anna held the tip of her wand timidly and said, "Joel." "It seems you're getting better," John remarked, as he snapped his fingers, magically repairing the items that had been destroyed. "Well, it looks like I'll need to buy some replacements." As they walked, John turned to Ariana and suggested, "How about we go shopping in Diagon Alley?" Ariana nodded in agreement. Soon, they found themselves at an ice cream parlor in Diagon Alley. John watched with a mix of amusement and bewilderment as Ariana drizzled a generous spoonful of honey over her ice cream. He couldn't help but wonder if everyone with the surname Dumbledore had an innate affinity for honey, akin to bees reincarnated. Ariana savored her sweet treat, her face lighting up with joy. Meanwhile, John, lost in thought, noticed a familiar face out of the corner of his eye. "Please, Molly, Voldemort isn't a threat these days," he overheard someone say. "Sirius, have you forgotten about Grindelwald?" Another voice countered. "Oh no," Sirius Black groaned, covering his head in exasperation. Beside him were Harry and Ginny. Sirius had been trying to create opportunities for Harry to spend time alone with Ginny, using the pretext of having the two help out at Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Molly, however, saw right through his scheme. She reminded him that she had been caring for Harry long before he became Harry's godfather. Mr. Weasley, wanting to intervene, found himself distracted by a nearby radio instead. Noticing John's gaze, Ariana followed it to the group. "It's nice to enjoy some carefree moments," John sighed. Then, turning to Ariana, he asked, "What do you like, Joel?" Ariana responded without hesitation. Feeling a bit helpless, John tried again. "Besides me." "Dad, Mom," she replied. "And besides them?" John pressed, seeking a different answer. Ariana thought for a moment, her large, clear eyes fixed on John, before saying, "Tom." John conceded, "Perhaps it's best if you don't attend school after all." He had initially planned for Ariana to complete her education, but it was clear she preferred the company of those she knew over school. The Wicks, unlike the Dumbledores, never hid Ariana away. Mrs. Wick, who had longed for a daughter, took great joy in dressing Ariana up, and even shared with her best friend that she intended to pass down a tea recipe from China to Ariana. As Ariana became more integrated into the family, she grew more vocal and began to master some basic spells, albeit only with the aid of Ravenclaw's crown. There was a humorous misunderstanding when John thought Ariana's affection for Tom referred to his dog. After encouraging the dog to spend more time with Ariana, he was surprised to find that Ariana had actually been referring to the cat from the Tom and Jerry cartoons. The poor dog ended up being relegated to the attic after a mix-up. As time passed, John prepared for his final year at Hogwarts. Packing his belongings, he lamented the loss of a magical bag he once had, filled with magic crystals and props. Unlike the Sword of Silver Wick, this bag had no special magic to retrieve it and was now lost, possibly floating in space as cosmic debris. With a sigh, John watched as his quill and ink, as if animated, leaped into his bag, followed by his clothes folding themselves neatly. The birdcage, once belonging to Basil, who had shown no interest in it, was left behind, a silent testament to the small yet significant changes in their lives. Despite the initial reluctance, the decision was made to proceed the following day. Watson was hesitant to reveal the plan, but John took the initiative to make the necessary changes. Accompanied by a family of 4, they navigated through the hidden pathways, using the stove as their portal to Nocturne Alley. Upon their arrival, Watson invoked a spell, cloaking their movements in secrecy. They swiftly exited Nocturne Alley, made their way to their car, and drove towards King's Cross Station. This brief episode of vanishing into thin air sent the agents monitoring Watson into a frenzy, baffled by the sudden disappearance of their subjects. The journey to King's Cross was uneventful, yet charged with an undercurrent of excitement and apprehension. The family, aware of the watchful eyes that had been following them, took every precaution to ensure their movements remained undetected. Watson, with a deep understanding of the magical world, led the way, his spells ensuring their passage remained hidden from any prying eyes. As they arrived at King's Cross, the bustling atmosphere of the station did little to ease their tension. The throngs of people, the echoing announcements, and the steam from the trains created a chaotic backdrop to their mission. Yet, amidst this confusion, they found solace in their unity and the knowledge that they were steps away from entering a world that promised safety and wonder. The magic that had enveloped their journey from Nocturne Alley to King's Cross was a testament to the power and secrecy that the magical world held. It was a reminder that, despite the dangers that lurked, there were always pathways and allies ready to guide and protect those who belonged to this hidden society. As they stood before the barrier that would lead them to Platform 9-4, the family shared a moment of silent communication, a mutual understanding of the significance of the step they were about to take. With a final look of determination, they pushed forward, ready to embrace the adventures that awaited them on the other side. Chapter 569, Departure from King's Cross. At King's Cross Station, Watson felt a sense of discomfort as he noticed groups of people pointing in his direction. He couldn't help but wonder, with such a powerful secret agent at my disposal, why am I the one being pursued? Unbeknownst to him, despite being the second most influential figure in the magical world and the proprietor of Nocturne Alley, his son's status still attracted considerable attention. John, unlike others, hadn't resorted to any magical disguises or alterations, a topic often discussed among parents sending their children off to Hogwarts. Ariana, feeling slightly intimidated by the bustling station, had a fleeting shadow of fear in her eyes, quickly suppressed. Standing by the entrance to Platform 9 3/4, John bid farewell to his family. "Ariana, if you miss me, just write," he said, affectionately ruffling her hair. Kiki, the family's beloved pet, had essentially become Ariana's constant companion. Ariana nodded in response, and John turned to his father with a smirk. "Are you certain the school has been fully repaired?" Watson inquired, recalling the extensive damage from a previous incident. "I remember it being in ruins." John, with a nonchalant glance at his father, replied, "Well, considering someone decided to ride a fire dragon into the headmaster's office, it did require some time. But with a professional team, the repairs weren't too challenging." Watson whistled, feigning ignorance, while Mrs. Wick planted a kiss on her son's cheek, her words laced with concern. "Try not to worry us this time, little wolf cub." Embarrassed, John quickly changed the subject, signaling to Tang Mi, who nodded in understanding. The station was heavily guarded by the silver-handed security team, tasked not only with maintaining order, but also with preventing any unforeseen incidents. As John made his way into Platform 9 3/4, he was immediately recognized by Colin, a Gryffindor and the school's war correspondent. "It's John Wick!" Colin exclaimed, causing all eyes to turn their way. Rushing over, Colin asked, "May I take a picture with you?" "Of course," John replied with a smile. "After all, we're classmates." Colin eagerly snapped a series of photos, and as they proceeded, respectful greetings filled the air. "John? Mr. Wick. It's an honor, Mr. Wick. Thank you for saving my child's life." The gratitude from Hogwarts parents was palpable, and lurking reporters quickly emerged, hoping to capture a scoop on the celebrated hero. John's fame had eclipsed even that of the renowned Gilderoy Lockhart, making any news about him highly sought after. Just as the reporters prepared to swarm, Draco Malfoy stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Move aside! Are you all deaf?" he barked at the crowd. Confronting a defiant reporter, Malfoy declared, "I am Draco Malfoy. Which publication do you represent? My father, Lucius, could buy it out in a heartbeat." The reporters, taken aback by Malfoy's audacity, hesitated. One, however, managed to snap a photo, only for Malfoy to critique his technique and demand a more flattering angle, showcasing his best side. Malfoy's unapologetic demeanor single-handedly dispersed the press, earning an impressed nod from John, who half-jokingly advised, "Promise me, always carry a magic wand when you're out." With that, they boarded the Hogwarts Express, leaving the commotion of King's Cross behind for the tranquility of the journey ahead. As John boarded the train, he was greeted warmly by his fellow students. Finding an empty compartment, he settled in comfortably, stretching his limbs in anticipation of the journey ahead. Draco Malfoy, with his usual air of arrogance, strutted into the compartment, his chest puffed out in pride. John, observing Malfoy's demeanor, understood immediately the source of his pride. "I see you're still a prefect," John remarked casually. Malfoy, unable to contain his pride, responded, "Slughorn has an eye for talent." "Indeed," John replied, one challengely pulling out a badge from his pocket and placing it on the table. Malfoy's expression turned from smug satisfaction to shock as he laid eyes on the badge. "Student body president," John announced, his tone even. Malfoy, momentarily stunned, silently removed his prefect badge, his earlier bravado deflated. "I should check on Goyle and Crabbe. If those two don't improve their grades, they'll be repeating the year," Malfoy muttered, trying to regain some of his lost dignity. He then proceeded to kick Goyle, reasserting his dominance and signaling his intention to maintain his rank until graduation. Through the window, John's gaze followed Harry Potter as he approached the train. The defeat of Voldemort had altered many destinies, allowing Harry to continue his education at Hogwarts. Ron and Hermione followed closely behind Harry, their friendship as strong as ever, though their paths had subtly shifted. John's thoughts turned to the Deathly Hallows. The Elder Wand was currently in Grindelwald's possession, the Resurrection Stone was with John, and the Invisibility Cloak was indirectly under Dumbledore's care through Harina. Each of the three held a piece of the legendary trio. "Grindelwald seeks the Resurrection Stone," John mused, his fingers brushing over the locket that contained the stone. Grindelwald's ambition to collect all the Deathly Hallows was driven by his desire to become the Master of Death, a goal that would inevitably lead to conflict. John harbored his own desires for the Hallows. The Elder Wand's power was tempting, and while the Invisibility Cloak had its limitations, the Resurrection Stone held untapped potential. However, John knew that now was not the time to pursue these artifacts, especially with Grindelwald eager to pit him against Dumbledore. With a heavy sigh, John closed his eyes, allowing sleep to overtake him as the train chugged towards Hogwarts, signaling the start of a new term in the post-war world. Astoria Greengrass, now a fifth year and a newly appointed prefect, was delighted with her new role, eager to prove herself. The student body president, along with the prefects, was responsible for maintaining order on the train, but it seemed that everyone agreed that John's intervention was unnecessary for such minor matters. When the train ride smoothed out, Daphne Greengrass and others joined John in his compartment. The conversation took a turn when Malfoy, driven by curiosity, picked up a mysterious book floating in the air. His attempt to open it was met with fear, prompting him to question, "What in the world is this?" John, with a flick of his fingers, made the book levitate again, explaining, "It's a tome written by ancient Greek wizards." Daphne, feeling uneasy, commented, "This thing is really sinister." John, impressed by her sensitivity, complimented Daphne on her progress. Malfoy, not wanting to be outdone, claimed he had noticed the book's dark aura as well. Daphne, however, mocked him, suggesting that his curiosity could lead to trouble. To lighten the mood, Astoria offered Malfoy some chocolate, breaking it in half and sharing it with him. Malfoy accepted it gratefully, his mood visibly brightening. Daphne, seizing the opportunity, presented a homemade cake, further enhancing the camaraderie in the compartment as they continued their journey to Hogwarts. Shyly, he offered, "Try it." Malfoy glanced at the chocolate and then at the three-tiered mini-cake, his disdain barely concealed. Meanwhile, the smoke-trailing train neared the station, its arrival marked by the sun's reluctant descent, leaving behind a lingering afterglow. At the station, the ever-popular Professor Hagrid stood ready to welcome the incoming freshmen. This year, however, the new students reacted differently upon seeing Hagrid's half-giant stature. Instead of fear, their faces lit up with excitement. "Are you Rubus Hagrid, the one who wears armor?" one student asked in awe. "That's so cool. Where's your armor now?" inquired another, eyes wide with curiosity. "May I touch it?" a third chimed in, eager to connect with the legend before them. The freshmen buzzed with excitement, having recognized the towering figure from newspaper stories. Hagrid, known for his heroic stand on the bridge clad in armor, had become a living legend in their eyes. "Quiet down, everyone. Please, quiet," Hagrid called out, trying to herd the enthusiastic crowd. "Line up and follow me. And be careful not to stray too close to the edge of the platform." Hagrid, though bewildered by the warm reception, couldn't help but shout for order. This group's enthusiasm was a stark contrast to previous years, where students often recoiled from his animal-like scent. From a distance, John smiled and waved at Hagrid, silently hoping that this year's batch of students would avoid any mishaps, particularly falling into the lake, a common occurrence during the welcoming ceremony. Chapter 570, Grade 7, Final Mission. "This thing is truly hideous. Can't we have something more pleasant?" Malfoy complained, eyeing the Thestrals pulling the carriage with disdain. "Damn, it almost bit me," he exclaimed, pulling his hand back in indignation. His ability to provoke even the Thestrals into aggression was a testament to Malfoy's unique talent. Neville approached the carriage, causing Malfoy to nearly tumble out due to the sudden crowd. "It seems this semester will be a peaceful one," Neville remarked, adjusting the collar that seemed to be constricting his neck. He added, somewhat dreamily, "I mean, Voldemort is dead." "Perhaps," John responded noncommittally. Hogwarts appeared to be at peace, finally free from the shadow of Voldemort that had loomed over it for years. This meant that students no longer had to live in fear of one day seeing a green skull mark above them. Neville, whose parents had suffered at the hands of Death Eaters and were hospitalized, felt this relief most deeply. The boy from the Longbottom family, once thought to be a squib, had become a hero in the wizarding world by ending Voldemort's life. "It's only going to get better, Neville," John said with a chuckle. "You're free to pursue whatever you wish." Neville scratched his head sheepishly. "Actually, I plan to stay after graduation." "Stay? As a professor?" Malfoy asked mockingly. "And what would you teach?" "Sword fighting." "Neville's expertise in herbology is exceptional," John interjected, supporting the idea without hesitation. "He could become a professor of herbology." "I'm sure Professor Sprout would be delighted to see that happen," Daphne added, nodding in agreement. As the carriage approached the oak gate, Malfoy leaped out and whistled. "I thought things would be different." "Familiarity is comforting," John remarked, stepping out of the carriage and offering his hand to help Daphne down. The entire castle had been restored, with areas damaged by dark magic cleansed of their curses. Entering the entrance hall, a water balloon fell from above, only to be intercepted by a large, comical face. Peeves, the poltergeist, removed his hat, wrung out the water, and said with exaggerated drama, "Welcome back, King of Hogwarts." He had planned to ambush the students, but hadn't expected John to be the first to enter. "My lord, forgive my impudence," Peeves said, his tone shifting to one of mock humility. "Peeves," John began, causing Peeves to brace for a reprimand. Instead, John smiled and said, "Just aim more accurately next time, but make sure to hide before the professors arrive." Peeves, momentarily taken aback, quickly responded with glee, "Of course, my lord." He then flew to the ceiling, hiding in anticipation of dousing the next group of unsuspecting students with water balloons. As John entered the Great Hall, he heard a mix of screams, shouts, and Peeves' laughter from outside. Despite the initial curses, the atmosphere quickly turned to laughter. The water balloon welcome let the students know that Hogwarts remained unchanged, even after the war. The gloom of the Great War had been completely dispelled by Peeves' antics, marking the start of this year's school feast. Ding! The final mission of the Hogwarts stage has begun, past the 7th year of the Magic Apprentice. Mission reward, Magic Blood +1, random points +3. John felt a wave of nostalgia as he realized this would be his last mission at Hogwarts. The system, though unobtrusive, had been a significant aid to him. As he was reflecting, the system chimed again. Ding! Challenge mission triggered. Discover the secret chambers of the other 2 founders before the end of the school year. Mission reward, Magic Blood +1. John's eyes sparkled with excitement. The secret chambers of the other 2 founders, he mused. This was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. John had always been intrigued by the possibility that the remaining 2 founders of Hogwarts, besides Godric Gryffindor and Salazar Slytherin, might have left their own legacies within the school's ancient walls. This year, he had planned to focus on Hagrid's Conservation of Magizoology course, but the mystery of the founders' hidden chambers piqued his interest even more. Despite the extensive battles fought within Hogwarts, including the final showdown with Voldemort, these chambers had remained elusive. This enigma fueled John's curiosity about their whereabouts. At the opening banquet, Professor Slughorn had modestly claimed he was unsuited for the role of headmaster. However, John, seeing an opportunity, presented him with a book titled Hogwarts' Brave Headmaster Horace Slughorn. Slughorn, initially contemplating resignation, was swayed by the gesture. The title of a brave headmaster was too appealing, especially since Slughorn's contributions during his tenure were minimal, save for his joint effort with Professor McGonagall in besieging Voldemort. For a Slytherin, the allure of honor and reputation was irresistible. During the feast, the conversation turned to the Star Society, a club that had vanished after its last summoning in battle. Draco Malfoy, curious, inquired about its fate while indulging in a hearty serving of mashed potatoes with meat sauce. John, with a thoughtful glance at his own plate, revealed that he had returned the Star Society to its secret chamber within Slytherin. The last battle had drained its magical reserves, and it had yet to recover fully. "I've made some modifications," John admitted, peeling the skin from his potato with a hint of struggle. "It will now appear next to Star Society members as needed." Seizing the opportunity presented by the last battle, John had transformed the Star Society. It was no longer confined to a single location, but could now move throughout Hogwarts, appearing wherever its members required. This mobility was made possible by the residual magic permeating the school. However, the Room of Requirement remained the one place where the Star Society could not be summoned. This adaptation not only served the club's needs, but also aided John in his quest to uncover the founders' secret chambers. As the new academic year began, John noted the absence of werewolves among the freshmen, though several students from prominent wizarding families caught his attention. After the sorting ceremony, he lingered behind the group heading to the Slytherin common room, sensing someone was following him. In the corridor, he exchanged a brief greeting with Filch before his attention was drawn to a peculiar choice of dessert, Mapo tofu ice cream. Despite its unusual flavor, John couldn't help but feel intrigued. Once the other students had entered the common room, John waited for the 2 individuals lurking in the corridor. Their slow approach was deliberate, and when they finally emerged, John faced them with a calm demeanor. "Pansy, I would expect you to be more rational," he said, addressing Pansy Parkinson, who stood beside Theodore Nott. Theodore, known for his betrayal of Slytherin, had surprisingly chosen to remain within its ranks. Theodore's silence was broken by a reluctant admission. "I want to stay," he confessed, his voice tinged with shame. "I know I don't deserve it, but I can't leave this place." John, understanding the complexity of Theodore's situation, listened as Pansy pleaded on his behalf, attributing Theodore's actions to his father's influence. John's gaze silenced her further pleas, his expression revealing a mix of skepticism and contemplation. Theodore's gaze met his, filled with a mixture of confusion and determination. He pondered the best approach to handle this overwhelmed individual. Chapter 571, Theodore, the Popular Professor. Pansy Parkinson was someone who often let her emotions guide her actions, especially evident in her romantic endeavors. This trait, while seemingly frivolous, was deeply rooted in the traditions of Slytherin House. On the surface, it might appear as mere infatuation, but at its core, it was about fierce loyalty and sacrifice. This was the kind of love that could drive a person to betray their own for the sake of protecting someone dear, even to the extent of risking their life for their offspring. In his mind, John couldn't help but critique this aspect of his dean, associating Slytherin's reputation with such intense emotional bonds. John was well aware of Theodore Knott's past actions. During the final battle of Hogwarts, Theodore had shown signs of remorse. He refrained from using unforgivable curses against Dumbledore and ceased his resistance as the battle drew to a close. "I thought you had accepted your fate," John remarked to Theodore, his tone light yet carrying an underlying seriousness. "It seems you still wish to fight." "The label of a traitor is never flattering, Theodore," John continued, silencing Pansy with a gesture as she attempted to defend Theodore. His gaze fixed on Theodore. He demanded, "Tell me, Theodore, why should you be forgiven?" The pressure emanating from John was overwhelming, transforming him in Theodore's eyes into a fearsome dragon poised for destruction. The mere thought of facing such a force was enough to unnerve anyone. Theodore's complexion turned ashen, and he struggled to maintain his composure under the immense weight of John's scrutiny. Every fiber of his being screamed in protest, as if bound by invisible chains. Pansy, rendered speechless by John's magic, watched anxiously, her concern for Theodore evident. Approaching Theodore, John placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice barely above a whisper. "Only those of significant value can redeem themselves from treason." Theodore collapsed under the burden, gasping for air, his body shaking uncontrollably. He looked up at John, the leader he had once followed without question. "Stand up, Theodore," John commanded, his gaze cold. "I taught you that strength is paramount." The effort to rise was excruciating for Theodore. Blood trickled from his lips as he used every ounce of his strength to push himself off the ground. Pansy moved to assist him, but a single look from John halted her. Theodore's struggle was pitiful, reminiscent of a wounded animal, yet there was a fierce determination in his eyes. Memories of his parents flashed before him, his father's obsession with pure-blood supremacy and his mother's teachings on the importance of family. After his mother's death, his father was all he had left, and when Voldemort threatened that last piece of his family, Theodore felt he had no choice but to betray his own. But the betrayal led to loss and abandonment by Slytherin. Now, with nothing left to lose, Theodore's desperation turned into resolve. He managed to stand, his body trembling as he faced John. With a roar of defiance, Theodore stood, veins bulging, and pointed his wand at his own heart. "All of this," he gasped, "I am willing to offer." John observed him in silence, the moments stretching out, each second an eternity for Theodore. Sweat pooled at his feet, but he remained steadfast, despite the agony that racked his body. Finally, John reached out and took the wand from Theodore. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, signaling a turning point for Theodore Knott. Theodore's body tilted, and he found himself kneeling before John, a gesture of defeat and respect. "You have shown your worth, Theodore," John observed, his gaze shifting to the wand in Theodore's hand. "Hawthorn wood, core of dragon heartstring, 12¼ inches, he noted, his voice carrying a hint of intrigue. "You are a person caught in a web of your own emotions, indecisive, hovering between the realms of right and wrong." Releasing his grip, John allowed the wand to drop before Theodore, a symbolic gesture. "Since you find yourself ensnared in indecision, Let go of your burdens, John advised with a calm demeanor. I will guide you on the path forward. Now, let your wand speak for you. Theodore, with a mixture of hesitation and resolve, picked up his wand. He looked at it, as if seeing it for the first time, then slowly raised his eyes to meet John's. With a mere wave of John's hand, Pansy's voice was restored. She rushed to Theodore's side, helping him to his feet, her gratitude evident. Thank you, John, she said earnestly. He's going to resent me, John remarked, his tone neutral, yet carrying an undercurrent of certainty. I've dismantled his world. Pansy cast a worried glance at Theodore, who could only whisper, For that, I am thankful, acknowledging the painful yet necessary intervention. John then turned, his steps leading him towards the Slytherin common room, leaving a complex web of emotions and revelations in his wake. The 7th year at Hogwarts proved to be as demanding as ever. The academic challenges of the 6th year needed to be addressed and overcome in the 7th, with the looming threat of repeating the year due to poor grades hanging over the students' heads. This was a rare occurrence, but not entirely out of the realm of possibility. Goyle and Crabbe, in particular, found themselves struggling. The duo, often described by Malfoy as a standing boar and a hairless orangutan, due to their lack of intellectual finesse, were the epitome of brawn over brains. Pansy was assigned the daunting task of supervising their studies, a role she took on with a mix of determination and dread. Why Pansy? The answer lay in John's decision to appoint Theodore as their tutor, a move that sparked both resentment and ridicule from Goyle and Crabbe. Despite their mockery, Pansy stood by Theodore, offering her support and occasionally reprimanding the duo with a sharp tongue. The academic rigor of the 7th year mirrored that of the 6th, with the workload intensifying. John, however, remained detached from these academic struggles, his attention captured by a more heartwarming scene. Hagrid, now affectionately known as Professor Hagrid, was concluding his 3rd year of teaching with a sense of pride and accomplishment. His heroic actions during the Battle of Hogwarts had cemented his status as a beloved figure, his immense stature and bravery offering a sense of security comparable to that of Dumbledore himself. Hagrid's popularity among the students was undeniable, rivaling even that of Professor McGonagall for the top spot among Hogwarts faculty. Professor Flitwick, despite his prowess, simply couldn't compete with the visual impact of Hagrid's presence. As for Snape, his reputation remained polarizing, placing him high on the list of most disliked figures within the school, a position he shared with Malfoy due to various circumstances. In the midst of these reflections, Hagrid shared a personal concern with John about his owl, Basil, suggesting the bird's aggressive behavior might stem from loneliness. This conversation, filled with Hagrid's cautious speculation and John's silent contemplation, highlighted the unique bond between humans and magical creatures, a theme that resonated deeply within the walls of Hogwarts. Peering through the gap between the leaves, Hagrid groaned in dismay. Oh no, why is it there? He stroked his beard anxiously, contemplating the idea that it might be best for him to avoid venturing outside for the next couple of weeks. John, somewhat at a loss for words, suggested, You don't have to worry too much. Maybe offering it some snacks could appease it. Nonsense, Hagrid retorted gloomily. I tried that last time, but it still came after me. What did you give it? John inquired, puzzled. Mink, Hagrid replied. John was taken aback. Do you think it's Buckbeak? You can't just treat all magical creatures the same, Hagrid. Feeling misunderstood and increasingly anxious, Hagrid recalled a particularly harrowing experience during a 5th grade deer class. According to the students present that day, Hagrid had been chased from the Forbidden Forest all the way to the Black Lake by the creature, resulting in a significant portion of his beard being torn off in the ordeal. The incident underscored the unpredictable nature of magical creatures and the unique challenges Hagrid faced in his role as the keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. Despite his vast knowledge and love for magical creatures, even Hagrid could find himself at odds with the very beings he sought to protect and understand. Chapter 572, Lady Grey and the Secrets of Ravenclaw. The 4 houses of Hogwarts are not only distinguished by their respective colors, but also by their iconic house ghosts. The Bloody Baron of Slytherin, Nearly Headless Nick of Gryffindor, the Fat Friar of Hufflepuff, and Lady Grey of Ravenclaw. These spectral figures have roamed the halls of Hogwarts for centuries, with Professor Binns, the history of magic teacher, being perhaps the only ghost older than them. John, having completed all 13 courses, enjoyed the freedom to attend any class of his choosing. Despite its reputation for being dull, he decided to attend a history of magic lecture. This subject, unique in that it required no magical skill but merely a good memory, was surprisingly popular among students. John's presence in the class was unexpected, as he had never shown interest in it before. After the lecture, John sought out Professor Binns. The ancient ghost, so engrossed in his teaching that he seemed to have forgotten his own demise, was a figure of intrigue for John, who wondered if Hogwarts compensated its ghostly faculty. Professor Binns, with his extensive tenure, was surpassed in seniority only by the founders themselves. "Professor Binns," John began, "I'm curious about Rowena Ravenclaw and Helga Hufflepuff." "Ah, Wick," Professor Binns responded in his wheezing, drawn-out tone. John was one of the few students whose name he could recall correctly, a testament to John's notable place in history. "I'm interested in knowing if, like Slytherin and Gryffindor, the other two founders also left behind secret chambers," John inquired. "Sorry, Wick, my knowledge on the secret chambers of those founders is limited," Professor Binns admitted. "However, Ravenclaw was a wise lady who believed knowledge should be preserved, not hidden away. Yet, where she might have concealed any knowledge remains a mystery." John mused. With her intellect, she could easily make such a place undiscoverable. But then, what's the point if no one can benefit from the knowledge? "Indeed," Professor Binns agreed. "The legacies of the founders reflect their values. Gryffindor's secret chamber, accessible only to the brave and adventurous, and Slytherin's, openable solely by those who speak Parseltongue, mirror their respective values of bravery and ambition. Ravenclaw, valuing wisdom, would likely have designed her secret chamber around that principle." John pondered the possible location of Ravenclaw's secret chamber as Professor Binns continued. "Hufflepuff, wise in her own right, likely did not create a secret chamber. She treated all students equally and with kindness, dedicating everything to Hogwarts." John sighed, realizing the search for Hufflepuff's secrets might be in vain. His thoughts now turned to uncovering Ravenclaw's hidden knowledge. Bidding Professor Binns farewell, John made his way to Ravenclaw Tower. As he approached, he was greeted by Luna Lovegood's voice. "John," she called out, adorned in her distinctive large shell earrings. Beside her, a creature resembling a large horned beast held a bunch of dragon fruits. "It's impressive how quickly it's grown," John remarked, pausing to chat. "Aren't you supposed to be in class, Luna?" Luna, seemingly lost in thought, replied, "I don't have classes this morning. What brings you here?" She was now in her 6th year, her curiosity and unique perspective on the world as strong as ever. John, with a mission in mind, knew that Luna's insight might just be what he needed to uncover the secrets of Ravenclaw. After reorganizing her schedule, Luna found herself with an abundance of free time. Her participation in the Battle of Hogwarts had left her with barely a scratch, thanks in part to the amulets John had crafted for her, designed in a style that resonated with her unique sensibilities. Consequently, she seldom went anywhere without them. "Your intuition has always been remarkably accurate," John remarked, even before he had shared his intentions. Luna had preemptively guessed his purpose, leaving him slightly taken aback by her perceptiveness. "You seem to always know what's on my mind." Luna tilted her head, her voice airy as if part of a melody. "Thank you for the compliment." John smiled, his hand halfway raised as if to pat her head, a gesture from when she was younger, but he stopped himself, acknowledging silently that Luna was no longer the little girl she once was. "I'm in search of Lady Grey of Ravenclaw. Do you know where I might find her?" "She often reads in the library section of the common room," Luna replied, her voice maintaining its ethereal quality. "It appears I'll need your guidance to find her," John said, stepping aside and bowing slightly with a smile. "Miss Lovegood." Luna's face lit up with a smile, and she led the way with a spring in her step. Upon reaching Ravenclaw Tower, John was introduced to the unique entry method of the house. The entrance was guarded by a door with a bronze knocker shaped like an eagle, which posed a riddle that needed to be answered sensibly to gain entry. This method, John thought, was a testament to Ravenclaw's appreciation for wit and intelligence. Eager to try his hand at the challenge, John stepped forward, only to be met with a series of perplexing questions from the bronze knocker, ranging from philosophical queries about the nature of existence to seemingly trivial matters. Each question left him more baffled than the last, ultimately leading him to concede, "I don't think I'm cut out for Ravenclaw." Luna, observing John's struggle, offered a different perspective, suggesting that his fixation on finding the real answer was what held him back. When it was her turn to answer a riddle, she provided an imaginative response that, while unconventional, was accepted by the knocker, allowing them entry. John was humbled by the experience, realizing that his alchemist's pursuit of truth had perhaps narrowed his thinking. He expressed his gratitude to Luna, who simply reminded him of the value of their friendship. Inside they found Ms. Grey, the Ravenclaw ghost, immersed in a book. Her ethereal form and the serene dignity with which she engaged with the text painted a picture of cool, detached beauty. John approached her with respect, hoping not to repeat a past mistake that had earned him her displeasure. He expressed his desire to speak with her about Ravenclaw, only to be met with a flash of anger. Ms. Grey's reaction hinted at a deeper story, one that John was unwittingly becoming a part of. Surprised by her intense response, John found himself curious about the identity of him and what it meant for his quest for knowledge within Ravenclaw. "Tom Riddle!" Grey exclaimed, her voice seething with fury. "Then you can rest assured," John replied with a smile, his tone calm and confident. "I have already dealt with him." Ms. Grey's expression shifted from anger to disbelief, her eyes searching John's for any sign of deceit. The room fell into a tense silence, the weight of John's declaration hanging heavily in the air. It was a moment before she found her voice again. You've killed him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to believe the words she was uttering. John nodded, his smile fading into a more solemn expression. "Yes, it was a difficult task, but Tom Riddle is no longer a threat." The news seemed to wash over Ms. Grey in waves, disbelief, relief, and a myriad of other emotions playing across her face. For years, the shadow of Tom Riddle had loomed large over their world, his actions causing untold suffering and fear. John's words, if true, signified the end of a dark chapter. "How did you manage it?" she finally asked, her curiosity overcoming her initial shock. Tom Riddle was a formidable opponent, feared by many. John leaned back, considering his words carefully before answering. It required careful planning and the element of surprise. Riddle was powerful, but even he had vulnerabilities. I studied him, learned his habits and weaknesses, and when the time was right, I struck. Miss Grey extended intently, her initial skepticism slowly giving way to a sense of awe and gratitude. The thought that someone had finally put an end to Tom Riddle's reign of terror was almost too much to comprehend. "Thank you," she said at last, her voice filled with a depth of emotion. "You've done what many believed was impossible. You've given us hope." John met her gaze, the gravity of the moment not lost on him. "It was my duty," he replied simply. "No one should live in fear. Now we can begin to heal and rebuild." The conversation marked a turning point, the beginning of a new era free from the shadow of Tom Riddle. As Miss Grey and John continued to talk, there was a sense of optimism in the air, a belief that after years of darkness, the light was finally breaking through. Chapter 573, The Uncrowned King in Search of the Secret Chamber. It was evident that in his youth, Voldemort had not flaunted his looks. However, John was taken aback to discover that Voldemort's disregard extended even to ghosts. "Tom, you really are beyond words." John found himself at a loss for words. Voldemort was long gone, and Lady Grey was aware of this fact. Yet, having been deceived in the past, she found it challenging to trust once more, especially when confronted with someone who bore a striking resemblance to the young Tom Riddle, a remarkably handsome boy. "Please believe me, Miss Grey," John implored with sincerity. "I am not that man." Despite his plea, Miss Grey's response was a cold snort. His handsome appearance made it difficult for her to trust him. John was in a predicament. He thought, "What does Voldemort's misdeeds have to do with me, John Wick?" An idea crossed his mind. Perhaps he could use the Return of the Soul spell on Miss Grey. But then he reconsidered, Recognizing her as a long-standing member of the Hogwarts staff, it didn't seem right to use such measures on her. "Miss Grey, John is a good man," came an ethereal voice, breaking the silence. It was Luna. Upon hearing Luna's endorsement, Miss Grey's attitude shifted from wariness to mere suspicion. "You must give me a chance, right?" John asked, managing a wry smile. "You can always refuse to answer my question after hearing it." After much hesitation, Miss Grey reluctantly agreed, if only for Luna's sake. "Whatever your question is, I won't tell you," she stated, yet she made no move to leave. Seizing the opportunity, John inquired, "I want to ask about Rowena Ravenclaw's Chamber of Secrets." "You're looking for Ravenclaw's diadem?" Miss Grey scoffed. "Stop dreaming." "No, that's not it," John replied, his expression unchanging despite already having secured the diadem. "I seek the knowledge of Ravenclaw." "Knowledge?" Miss Grey gave John a penetrating look. "What you seek is hidden so deeply that no wizard, no matter how clever, has been able to find it." With those words, Miss Grey rose and departed. John pondered her words, realizing her lack of denial means the secret chamber truly exists. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. As Miss Grey left, John glanced at the book she had been reading. "The Domineering Wizard Falls in Love with Me." He couldn't help but wonder, are there really books like this in the Ravenclaw library section? It appeared that Miss Grey had been engrossed in a novel rather than academic texts. Exiting the Ravenclaw common room, John confidently approached the bronze knocker, only to leave Ravenclaw Tower with a sigh. "Sorting Hat, I shouldn't have doubted you," he mused. It seemed the Sorting Hat's assessment of him not being suited for Ravenclaw was accurate. Along the way, he encountered Ravenclaw students who greeted him warmly. The Battle of Hogwarts had revealed to them that John Wick was not only the king of Slytherin, but also the uncrowned king of Hogwarts. Without John, they believed Hogwarts would have fallen. Though John never claimed the title, the students had come to recognize him as their king. Meanwhile, life for the former headmaster Slughorn was leisurely and enjoyable, filled with conversations with former students. Arriving at the auditorium, John sat deep in thought about the Chamber of Secrets. Ms. Grey's words echoed in his mind, presenting a challenge that seemed insurmountable. No matter how clever a wizard is, it's impossible to find it. Her gaze had been that of a challenger, daring him to conquer an impossible peak. "What are you thinking about?" Malfoy asked, sitting down opposite John with a sneer. Today's class was extremely lively, and Potter doesn't have the skills for a school year. John recalled how Malfoy had taken Harry's advanced potion-making book the previous year. In the first potions class of the new school year, Harry had accidentally ruined a potion, giving Snape the opportunity to deduct points from Gryffindor. John glanced at Malfoy, wondering about his fixation on Harry. If Harry had been a girl, he mused, the dynamics might have been quite different, especially without Astoria. Looking at the House Point hourglasses, John noted that the competition between Slytherin and Gryffindor was as fierce as ever. There was no need to dwell on who was ahead. The real challenge lay in uncovering the secrets that Hogwarts still concealed. Points were deducted. "You had points taken away?" Malfoy's smile vanished as he spoke through clenched teeth. "That cursed Blake was deliberately targeting me." The most notable change this school year was the continuation of Sirius Black as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, breaking the annual turnover tradition. It was rumored that the curse associated with the position was lifted following Voldemort's demise. Originally, Sirius had planned to serve for only 1 year, but due to the chaos after the war, he forgot to resign, inadvertently extending his tenure. This oversight led to the belief that the notorious curse had been broken, promising a more stable future for Hogwarts faculty. However, Malfoy's immediate concern was the points Sirius deducted from him for overly aggressive wand use during class. This incident seemed to herald a new era of point deduction battles at Hogwarts. Fueled by indignation, Malfoy vowed, "I'm going to humiliate Potter in Quidditch this year." The prospect of another tumultuous Quidditch season loomed over the players. In the midst of this, a barn owl hesitantly approached John, while Basil, the smug owl, flew past. The barn owl delivered a newspaper before swiftly departing. John picked up the paper, prompting a discussion about finding a partner for Basil, which seemed to irritate the bird. Daphne, intrigued by the conversation, mistakenly believed Basil and another owl named Riddle were a pair, only to learn they were both female. This revelation surprised her, as she had always assumed Riddle was male based on its demeanor. Astoria, arriving from the library, joined the group and noticed a blooming lily Malfoy had given her, sparking a moment of curiosity. The conversation shifted when John noticed a headline about Grindelwald's reappearance in Berlin. The news was unsettling. Grindelwald's return, with his followers in tow, cast a shadow over the relief felt after Voldemort's defeat. Europe, having endured Grindelwald's terror in the past, feared him more than Voldemort. John, who had once taught a young Grindelwald, was particularly concerned. The article suggested that Grindelwald, now rejuvenated and wielding the Elder Wand, posed a significant threat. John speculated about the German Ministry of Magic's potential complicity with Grindelwald, especially given the minister's odd reaction to a lack of werewolf attacks at a recent event. This speculation, combined with Grindelwald's bold reappearance, hinted at a troubling alliance and raised fears of history repeating itself with Grindelwald at the helm of a new dark era. John absent-mindedly scooped up a spoonful of fried rice, his focus elsewhere as he brought it to his mouth. "So, what's the latest with the situation in France?" he inquired. His curiosity piqued about the progress Heinrich and King were making there. Jin's eyes lit up at the question, eager to share the adventures they had experienced during their holiday. He enthusiastically recounted the numerous scenic spots they had visited, painting vivid pictures with his words. However, he skillfully avoided any mention of the branch, a topic that seemed to linger just beneath the surface of the conversation. Given Heinrich and King's capabilities, John mused, the preparations for establishing the branch in France should be nearing completion by now. Their expertise and dedication were reassuring, yet the omission of any direct update on the branch's progress left a lingering question in the air, hinting at complexities yet to be unveiled. Chapter 574, The French Branch and a Reunion with Lockhart. In a secluded corner of France, Heinrich's expression darkened as he swatted away Jin's approaching hand. Jin, undeterred, shook his head and sighed. "As your senior, I'm surprised at the lack of respect you're showing." "Senior?" Heinrich scoffed, his disdain palpable. "I don't recall ever considering you my senior." "Why not?" Jin countered, his tone light yet firm. "Age-wise, I'm older than you. In terms of skill, I was known as the silver-handed Johnny long before you. And let's not forget, I have more experience in running a shop. Doesn't that qualify me as a senior?" Heinrich chose to ignore the comment, instead focusing on their surroundings. "Someone's coming," he stated, his gaze fixed on the distance. They were in Corner Alley, a notorious spot within their hideout. A place where the shadows of the wizarding world converged. Corner Alley was a haven for those seeking items not found in the light of day. However, the scene today was different. Bodies strewn across the ground spoke of a recent, fierce battle. Besides Heinrich and Jin, several other wizards were casting sleeping spells on an awakening victim. The sound of approaching footsteps put everyone on high alert. A man emerged, his familiarity with the chaos around him evident as he removed his hat and smiled. This was the last shop involved in the illegal resale of silver hand products. "The Aurors will take it from here," he announced, revealing himself to be a French Auror. Corner Alley's illicit dealings had long been overlooked by the Aurors, especially when it came to the Silver Hand's crusade against dark forces. The Auror's message was clear. This was the final warning. Any further conflict might provoke a response from the shadows. Heinrich's stare was icy, but Jin couldn't help but sneer. "You think that's the end of it?" he challenged. The Auror's smile faltered, replaced by an awkward grin. "Oh, I almost forgot. There's a shop up for sale in the hideout. The owner is desperate for cash." A desperate sale often meant a bargain price. The French Ministry of Magic, while tacitly supporting the Silver Hand's efforts against darkness, was also offering them a prime location. "Tell those people the Silver Hand doesn't need their charity," Heinrich replied coolly, his voice laced with disdain. The Auror's displeasure was brief but noticeable. Nevertheless, he maintained his smile. "I'll pass on the message," he assured, watching as Heinrich and the others departed. Surveying the incapacitated wizards, the Auror muttered to himself about the gravity of the situation. The Minister of Magic, Charles Rowland, had given explicit instructions to handle it as an Auror operation. A group of Aurors emerged, ready to detain the fallen wizards under any pretext of criminal activity. The Silverhands' influence in France had grown steadily since their arrival. Initially a duo, their numbers had swelled over time. A week later, the French branch of the Johnny Silverhand store opened, with Jin overseeing its operations. His experience in the United States, alongside Nagini, had prepared him well for this venture. The store's launch was met with enthusiasm, facilitated by the French Ministry of Magic's endorsement. The minister himself was eager to see the benefits the Silverhand would bring. Meanwhile, others plotted to secure a piece of the success. The branch's opening reached a fever pitch with the arrival of Gilderoy Lockhart, a celebrity in the wizarding world. Lockhart's endorsement, mirroring his role in the American branch, positioned him as the face of the store. The headlines were ablaze with news of the opening. Hot off the press, Johnny Silverhand's French branch opens, featuring Gilderoy Lockhart. Gilderoy Lockhart's new book and exclusive interview, Regret over Missing the Battle for My Alma Mater. Lockhart's presence ensured the store's prominence, drawing attention from all corners of the wizarding community. John looked up, his thoughts interrupted by the latest news about Gilderoy Lockhart. Under the relentless praise of the media, Lockhart had transformed from a once famous writer into a powerful wizard renowned for his battles against Death Eaters, a brave warrior, and a hero dedicated to protecting the people. His latest book had shattered sales records, and his branded shampoo was acclaimed internationally. Lockhart's wealth had reached astronomical levels, yet he had shifted his focus towards philanthropy, much like Dharma Alex, who believed that once wealth reached a certain threshold, it ceased to be the primary pursuit. Gilderoy Lockhart has announced that he will donate half of the proceeds from his new book to the Little Wizard Fund, aiming to bring warmth to the children affected by the Neon event, the news proclaimed. This announcement thrust the Neon Ministry of Magic, which had been losing its influence, back into the limelight. Despite the Neon Ministry's constant delays and the minister's repeated yet empty gestures, there was no real solution in sight. The political landscape was fraught with internal strife, and external pressures only compounded their problems. The ministry viewed John with disdain, but he remained undeterred. If they continued to oppose him, he was ready to retaliate. Tangmi's letter brought more pressing concerns to John's attention, detailing the plight of Muggle children who had been sent home after their parents were killed, leaving them orphaned. John frowned, feeling that their attackers had met too swift an end. He harbored no regrets about the actions taken against the Magic Institute, only that those responsible had not suffered enough. The situation with the orphaned Muggle children was a dilemma. They couldn't remain in the wizarding world, yet they had nowhere else to go. The idea of opening an orphanage surfaced in John's mind as a viable solution. Accustomed to approaching problems from a wizarding perspective, he had almost overlooked a simple Muggle solution. He contemplated adopting the homeless Muggle children, though he recognized that establishing an orphanage would not be straightforward. Nonetheless, he was not without resources. John penned a letter to his father, suggesting that this could be an opportunity for him to also contribute to a good cause. After sending the letter off with Basil, his snowy owl, he also wrote to Lockhart, expressing his gratitude for the generous donation to the Little Wizard Fund. Lockhart's celebrity status had sparked a wave of contributions to the fund, with donations pouring in from celebrities across various fields, eager to support the cause. This influx of donations further enriched the already prosperous foundation. John's schedule for the school year was relatively simple, consisting of attending Hagrid's classes, searching for the Chamber of Secrets, and occasionally consulting with Slughorn about the Blood Curse. With ample free time, he explored nearly every corner of Hogwarts, including multiple ventures into the restricted section, which Miss Pince surprisingly overlooked. Doubts about the existence of a Ravenclaw Chamber of Secrets began to creep into John's mind after his extensive searches yielded no results. He had scoured locations associated with wisdom, including the headmaster's office, but found no trace of the chamber. The elusive Hufflepuff Chamber of Secrets also remained a mystery, leaving John frustrated but resigned to the fact that if it were easy to find, it wouldn't have remained hidden for 7 years. Upon returning to the common room, John found replies waiting for him. One was from his father, informing him that he had purchased a piece of land outside London for the orphanage. Given the special circumstances, the orphanage needed to be situated away from the wizarding world and inconspicuous to muggles. The suburbs seemed an ideal location, but finding a suitable administrator who wasn't a wizard presented a new challenge. John was wary of entrusting a wizard with the role, fearing their approach to problem-solving might not be suitable for the important task at hand. The notion that Muggle children could be carelessly tossed about by wizards was deeply unsettling. It was hard to expect any semblance of Muggle common sense from a wizard who would throw a child down the stairs just to test if they were a squib. The second letter John turned his attention to was from Lockhart. The former Ravenclaw student had mentioned in his reply that his new book centered around the theme of love. He expressed a desire to challenge himself and explore new genres of writing. However, the thought of a book on love written by Lockhart brought to John's mind images of banshees, vampires, and other dark creatures. Could those possibly embody true love? The notion seemed twisted. A wise man never falls in love, John mused, questioning what Ravenclaw's interpretation of love might be. With a sigh, he set Lockhart's letter aside, silently wishing him success in his unconventional endeavor. Just as he was about to reach for the third letter, John paused, reflecting on his own thoughts. "Wise men don't fall in love?" he questioned silently. The statement lingered in the air, challenging his beliefs and prompting a moment of introspection. Chapter 575, A Wise Man Never Falls in Love. Where do smart people not go? John pondered, stroking his chin thoughtfully. Ravenclaws are seekers of wisdom, so what could possibly make one abandon their quest for knowledge? He mused further, considering the nature of Ravenclaw's founder. She had dedicated her life to the pursuit of wisdom, symbolized by the diadem she left behind. It was difficult to imagine such a person forsaking wisdom for love. Lockhart inadvertently pointed me in the right direction, John realized, leaning back in his chair, his fingers drumming on the table. If it weren't for Lockhart's sudden desire to write a romance novel set in Paris, this idea might never have occurred to him. However, realizing the concept was one thing. Executing it was another matter entirely. Firstly, John himself was not in love. Secondly, where would he find someone who embodied this contradiction? A wise man never falls in love, John concluded, recognizing the complexity of the situation. Exiting his room, John's gaze fell upon Daphne, who was seated on the sofa in the common room, her eyes fixed intently on the large window, or more accurately, on who was standing there. "Let's go to the Black Lake another day," Malfoy proposed grandly. "I'll build a boat, and we can go boating." Astoria blinked, her smile sweet. "Okay, thank you, Draco." Malfoy, filled with pride, subtly moved closer to Astoria, his hand reaching out to touch her dress. Through the fabric, he felt a thrill. Applying slight pressure, he pressed the loose school robe against Astoria's skin, accentuating her slender waist. His heart raced as he leaned in closer, intoxicated by the scent of pear blossoms emanating from her. Their eyes locked, and they slowly moved closer to each other. Unable to bear the scene any longer, Daphne slammed her parchment on the table, overturning it in frustration. Drawing her wand, she unleashed a barrage of spells at Malfoy. "Leva Corpus," she shouted, followed by a series of curses. "Furnunculus, Rictus Empra, Tarantallegra, Densaugio." The Slytherin students watched in shock, rushing to intervene. "Calm down, Daphne," they pleaded, trying to restrain her. Malfoy, suspended in midair and covered in boils, couldn't help but laugh despite his predicament, his legs dancing uncontrollably as his teeth grew to an absurd size. Eventually, it was John who intervened, rescuing Malfoy from his plight. "I'm only 17. I just wanted a kiss. What's so wrong with that?" Malfoy protested. John simply looked at him, stepping aside. Daphne, ready to attack again, caused Malfoy to hastily pull John back as a shield. Blaise shook his head, sighing, "You should know better. Some things should be kept private, especially when you're aware of Daphne's feelings." It was an open secret in Slytherin who Daphne harbored feelings for. Malfoy's blatant display of affection for her sister, right in front of her, was more than just insensitive, it was a provocation. Caught in the reign of her own emotions, Daphne's actions spoke volumes of a heart in turmoil, struggling with the complexities of love and jealousy within the serpentine walls of Slytherin. Malfoy was at his wit's end, his patience frayed to the breaking point. His frustration was palpable as he tore into Blaise with a venomous retort. "You, who have been pining after Weasley for over a year without any success, obviously don't understand that overt affection is the most effective strategy," he sneered. Blaise, clutching his chest as if wounded, retreated step by step, his fists clenched in barely contained rage. "Malfoy, you insufferable jerk, keep talking, and I swear Daphne will be the death of you." Despite his words, Blaise, driven by a mix of desperation and courage, lunged at Malfoy, locking him in a grip from behind, and yelled for Daphne to take her shot. A burst of red light sent them both tumbling across the Slytherin common room, which was now in complete disarray. John, witnessing the chaos, decided it was best to remove Malfoy from the scene for a while. He reasoned that if they stayed, not only would Daphne possibly attack Malfoy again, but the entire house might join in. As they walked, Malfoy ruminated aloud. "It's clear that Astoria and I are just friends, but she's just jealous. If only she knew." He trailed off, lost in thought. John, seizing the moment, asked Malfoy if there was anything that could make him abandon his pursuit. Malfoy, taken aback, pondered the question before admitting he couldn't think of anything. John nodded, sensing that the issue was far from resolved. Their stroll took them through the corridors under the soft glow of the moonlight. They encountered Filch, who was on the prowl for students out past curfew. However, upon recognizing John, Filch's demeanor softened. "Good evening, John," he greeted, with John replying in kind and mentioning he had seen Mrs. Norris nearby. Filch chuckled at the mention of his cat before departing, leaving Malfoy in awe of John's ability to disarm the usually stern caretaker. As they continued their walk, Malfoy brought up the rumor of the King of Hogwarts, a title that students had begun associating with John. Malfoy expressed his pride in John's leadership, to which John responded with a playful gesture towards the moonlight, hinting at greater ambitions. Eventually, their wanderings led them to Ravenclaw Tower, adorned with numerous paintings. Malfoy, in a fit of pique, used his wand to illuminate the corridor, disturbing the slumbering figures within the paintings. His actions provoked the ire of several painted knights, but Malfoy taunted them, knowing they were powerless to leave their frames. In his agitation, Malfoy accidentally caused a cascade of falling paintings, which John magically halted and began to rehang. However, one particular painting caught John's attention, a serene riverside scene devoid of any life. Intrigued by its emptiness, John summoned a portrait of Sir Cadogan, hoping for an explanation. Sir Cadogan, ever the braggart, admitted he knew little, only that the painting had been part of Hogwarts since its inception, according to the fat lady. John thanked Sir Cadogan for his assistance, his curiosity piqued by the mysterious painting. The knight's adventures had taken an unexpected turn, leading him to ponder the secrets that Hogwarts still held, waiting to be uncovered. John nodded slightly in acknowledgement as he approached Sir Cadogan. The knight within the painting regarded him with a mixture of admiration and respect, declaring, "You're far superior to that skunk of a boy." The term, skunk boy, piqued John's curiosity. It appeared that even the inhabitants of the paintings were familiar with Malfoy's less-than-flattering nickname. Intrigued, he moved closer to the unique painting, taking a moment to study its details more closely. The painting, vibrant and alive with the history it contained, seemed to whisper secrets of the past. John couldn't help but feel a connection to the world within the frame, a world where bravery and valor were immortalized in oil and canvas. As he stood there, lost in thought, Sir Cadogan continued to regale him with tales of knights and their noble deeds. It was a reminder of the courage that Hogwarts sought to instill in its students, a courage that John felt stirring within him. Determined to live up to the legacy of the knights before him, John straightened his back and thanked Sir Cadogan for the inspiration. With a renewed sense of purpose, he turned away from the painting, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, with the dignity and bravery of a true Gryffindor. Chapter 576, A Slytherin's Adventure. Draco, are you up for an adventure? John inquired, his gaze lingering on the serene riverside depicted in the painting before them. Adventure? Draco Malfoy raised an eyebrow, a hint of disdain in his voice. I was under the impression that reckless endeavors were reserved for Gryffindors. Ah, Draco, your skill in delivering backhanded compliments has reached new heights, John remarked, his tone laced with a mix of amusement and concern. He couldn't shake off the feeling that if Malfoy continued on this trajectory, he might just become the most detested person in the entire wizarding community. Our first destination is Gryffindor Tower, John declared, snapping his fingers and briskly heading in that direction, with Malfoy trailing behind. Upon reaching the entrance, they found the fat lady, the guardian of the Gryffindor common room, dozing off. The once bustling common room was now a picture of tranquility, a stark contrast to the days when even Harry Potter, notorious for his escapades, refrained from sneaking out at night. After witnessing Filch's impressive feat of launching a giant into the air, Harry had wisely concluded that discretion was the better part of valor. Roused from her slumber by the sudden intrusion, the fat lady grumbled, "Password," her irritation palpable. John quickly intervened, asking Malfoy to lower his wand and address the portrait with a polite smile. Apologies, fat lady. We were hoping you could shed some light on the painting by the river in Ravenclaw Tower. The painting by the river? She repeated, momentarily distracted by her reflection in a mirror she had taken from an adjacent frame. After ensuring her appearance was impeccable, she turned her attention back to John. Ah, you mean the one that's always empty? That's one of the oldest paintings in Hogwarts. Rumor has it that it depicts the 4 founders, but you'll have to ask Violet about it. She's on the 7th floor, though I must warn you, she might be inebriated. Expressing his gratitude, John recalled how he had once repaired the canvas for the fat lady after it was damaged during Sirius Black's attempted break-in. It seemed she still remembered that gesture. With a new objective in mind, John and a somewhat reluctant Malfoy made their way to the 7th floor in search of Violet. They found her in a state of disarray, surrounded by empty bottles and barrels, a sight that prompted Malfoy to quip about her resemblance to their slumbering classmate, Crabbe. After an unsuccessful attempt to rouse her with light, John resorted to a more direct approach. With a flick of his wrist, Violet's frame began to shake violently, causing the bottles and barrels within to clatter noisily. Startled awake, Violet screamed in terror. Once she had calmed down, John, adopting a friendly demeanor as if the chaotic awakening had never occurred, greeted her warmly. "Hello, Miss Violet. We were hoping you could help us with some information." "Ask you," John said, his tone a mix of frustration and curiosity. "Oh, Merlin's beard," Violet exclaimed, sitting on the ground and cradling her head, which had been struck by the bottle. "You can't be so rough." "I'll educate him," John declared, pointing at Malfoy with a determined look. "He knows he's in the wrong." Malfoy looked puzzled. "What's wrong with me?" he wondered, genuinely confused by the accusation. Eventually, John managed to extract another name from Violet, Albert Wallen. This name belonged to a well-known figure, the author of Principles of Magic. When John sought him out, he found the wizard depicted in the portrait to be quite unlike the others. He wasn't asleep. Instead, Wallen was animatedly moving to another painting, deeply immersed in his emotions. "The moon is always beautiful. I prefer the darkness. It provides me with abundant inspiration," Wallen mused, a common sentiment among creators. "That painting?" John inquired, pointing to the one Wallen was admiring. "It's been ages since anyone asked about it. Hat's Rowena Ravenclaw's hometown," Wallen explained, leaning casually against the frame of his portrait. "A quiet riverside. Legend has it that a girl used to be in this painting, but she ran away from home and never returned," he continued. "A girl?" John echoed, surprised. "Who might that be?" "Perhaps Ravenclaw's daughter," Wallen suggested. Rowena Ravenclaw succumbed to an illness, historians believe, partly because she lost her daughter. The founders of Hogwarts were all formidable wizards and witches, with Rowena Ravenclaw renowned for her wisdom. If an illness claimed her, it must have been during a time of great vulnerability. "A wise person never falls in love," John murmured to himself. It wasn't just romantic love that could weaken someone, but also the profound love for a child that had made the wise witch vulnerable. After expressing his gratitude to Albert Wallen, John made his way back to the Slytherin common room. "Are we heading back?" he mused aloud. "I think I'll consult an acquaintance first," John decided upon seeing Malfoy, who was struggling to keep his eyes open. "I doubt Daphne is still waiting for you now," he told Malfoy, who merely nodded, half asleep. "That would be great," Malfoy mumbled, his thoughts already on the need to be alert for class the next day. "Strength comes first," John agreed, reciting the password and stepping back into the Slytherin common room. Turning a corner, John encountered the Bloody Baron floating in the corridor, seemingly lost in thought. "Admiring the moonlight?" John ventured. "No, I'm reminiscing," the Bloody Baron corrected, noticing John. The ghost, marked by silver bloodstains, added, "I expected you might come to me." "You really can't keep the secrets of Hogwarts from you," John remarked, impressed by the Bloody Baron's knowledge. "Sir Cadogan enjoys his wanderings," the Baron explained, his expression unchanging. "He's quite indiscreet." "I should have considered that," John admitted with a shrug. "So you know why I'm here?" "Rowena Ravenclaw," the Bloody Baron intoned gravely, "her daughter." "It seems you're well informed," John observed, noting the ghost's solemn demeanor. The Bloody Baron nodded, his voice low. "Unforgettable. It was I who killed her." Hearing this, John sensed the ghost's body tremble with the weight of his confession. She, like Rowena, sought wisdom. In her quest to surpass her mother, she took Ravenclaw's diadem. Rowena, missing her daughter dearly, enlisted me to find her, the Baron recounted, his story filled with tragic turns. The Bloody Baron, once a nobleman named Sir Barrow, had been deeply in love with Ravenclaw's daughter Helena. He found her in Albania, where a heated argument ensued. Barrow declared his love, but Helena rejected him. In a fit of rage, Barrow fatally stabbed her. Overwhelmed with remorse, he took his own life, thus becoming the ghost known as the Bloody Baron at Hogwarts. Rowena never saw her daughter Helena again, and had words left unsaid at her passing, the Baron shared, his form beginning to fade. That painting was crafted by Rowena for Helena. Helena despised it, driving away the essence within, which in turn weakened Rowena, he explained. They used to spend time by that riverside when Helena was young. As Rowena became busier, those visits ceased, the ghost concluded before disappearing entirely. John stood in contemplation. A Ravenclaw seeking wisdom, he mused, his gaze drifting to where the Bloody Baron had been moments before, lost in thought about the complexities of wisdom and love. "I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that request." Chapter 507. Helena, the Lady of the Chamber of Secrets. Lady Grey stood in the courtyard, her thoughts adrift in a sea of memories. For ghosts, the concept of time is paradoxical. It crawls at a snail's pace, yet decades can flash by in the blink of an eye. Her gaze fixed on a corner of the courtyard, where echoes of laughter shared with her mother seemed to linger in the air. She remembered asking her mother, "What is the most precious thing?" The witch, whose intellect made even Slytherin marvel, would smile tenderly and stroke her daughter's hair, whispering, "Extraordinary wisdom, Helena, is humanity's greatest treasure, and you, my dear, are my most precious jewel." This belief that extraordinary wisdom was humanity's greatest wealth was something Helena held close to her heart, striving to embody the ideal her mother revered. As the daughter of Ravenclaw, she was expected to surpass others in intelligence, a goal she pursued relentlessly from childhood. However, as she grew, Helena felt her mother's attention drifting away, consumed by a quest for wisdom. Desperate for her mother's recognition, Helena excelled in her studies, often gazing towards the Ravenclaw tower, hoping to catch her mother's eye. Yet, she realized how selfish and futile her desires seemed. Helena's sensitivity turned into obsession. Being Ravenclaw's daughter, she believed she had to be the epitome of intelligence. In a bold move to outshine her mother, she stole Ravenclaw's most treasured diadem and fled Hogwarts, hiding in a forest, convinced her mother would despise her for this disgrace. Lady Grey's gaze shifted from the courtyard corner, her eyes clouding over as if she could see the very sword that ended her life. "Helena, come back with me. Ravenclaw is gravely ill," Barrow pleaded in Albania. Helena scoffed at him. "I won't return. I will prove that I can be wiser than her." "She's calling for you," Barrow insisted. "Lies. Helena retorted. She has always preferred her books over me. Barrow's voice deepened. You must return with me, Helena. My love for you is unwavering. I don't care for your love, Helena snapped. I'd rather die here than return. Helena, Barrow exclaimed. Silence. Your love is as insignificant as an earthworm to me, Helena said coldly before turning to leave, only to be met by the fatal thrust of a sword. Ironically, Helena became a ghost, bound to the very place she vowed never to return, Hogwarts, and Ravenclaw passed away from her illness, leaving no portrait behind, her wisdom locked away in a secret chamber. Despite countless searches, Lady Grey could never locate this chamber. Her desire to prove herself smarter than her mother turned into a form of revenge, a seed planted deep within her since her mother's obsession with knowledge. Time's passage is a cruel reality for a ghost, where death and regret are constant companions, never fading with the years. As Lady Grey prepared to leave the courtyard, a voice called out, Need help, ma'am? She turned, frowning. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be a student? It was the first time Lady Grey had encountered a student so blatantly breaking curfew. John approached her under the moonlight, smiling. I have a question. I won't answer you, Lady Grey said, turning to leave. It's about Helena Ravenclaw, John persisted. Lady Grey paused, turning back to face him. Are you referring to Helena? She asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Yes, Rowena Ravenclaw's daughter, John confirmed, stepping closer to Lady Grey. How did you know? John paused, his deduction clear from the concerned Barrow the bloodied man had shown for Miss Grey, coupled with the story he had just heard. It was evident. The daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, the ghost of Ravenclaw, Lady Grey. Tom Riddle obtained the diadem from you, didn't he? Upon mentioning Voldemort, Helena's emotions surged. He lied to me, she exclaimed, her voice filled with betrayal. I trusted him so much. Helena's outcry revealed her pain. The charming wizard of her time had deceived her, leading to the loss of Ravenclaw's diadem, the last memento of her mother. Quiet, John whispered, placing a finger to his lips, showing understanding. I get it, Helena. You've always sought to surpass your mother's wisdom and prove yourself to Rowena Ravenclaw. That's impossible, Helena responded, her form levitating with a mix of defiance and resignation. No, it's not, John countered, locking eyes with her. But for that, I need you to accompany me somewhere. Suspicion flickered in Helena's eyes. What are you planning? She asked, wary of repeating past mistakes. The wizard named Tom Riddle had once spoken to her in a similar manner. Disgusting! Seeing her caution, John spread his hands in a gesture of harmlessness. You're a ghost. There's nothing I can do to you, but there's a place you'll definitely want to visit, he assured her, his gaze earnest. Ravenclaw's Chamber of Secrets, he revealed, watching her reaction closely. No, that's impossible, Helena objected instinctively. Trust me, Helena, John urged, his promise firm. Helena, though angry, couldn't hide her intrigue. You wish to prove your intelligence, and I shall see this through with you, she declared, despite her reservations. John smiled at her determination. Together, they entered the castle, with Helena trailing behind him. We're heading towards Ravenclaw Tower, she observed. Yes, perhaps it's a challenge even for the wise to locate, John mused, leading her to a specific painting. Helena scoffed upon seeing it. Where's this secret chamber you speak of? There, John pointed at the painting. That's the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. Impossible, Helena dismissed. When was the last time you paid attention to this painting? John asked calmly. Perhaps after you distanced yourself from it, you never looked back. Helena's expression darkened, her pride wounded. Ravenclaw wouldn't bother with trivialities. Even the smartest might overlook it, John countered gently, challenging her pride. As he approached the painting and tapped it, he mused, It seems hollow behind. Perhaps a password is required. Do you know it? No, Helena snapped, frustration evident. Try some of the famous quotes you know. John nodded, reciting, Extraordinary wisdom is the greatest treasure of mankind. The painting remained still. After several unsuccessful attempts, Helena muttered, Greedy predator. Seeing John's questioning look, she explained begrudgingly, It's the hidden essence of Ravenclaw. John shrugged, ready to give up, but then the painting swung open, revealing a tunnel. Surprised, he realized the password was related to Helena herself. It seems not just anyone can find it, he said, smiling at her. Helena was taken aback. never having considered her mother would use her name as a password. This revelation left her contemplative. "Perhaps Ravenclaw valued you more than you thought," John suggested, stepping into the tunnel. "Will you come?" "I will," Helena affirmed, floating inside. They were greeted by rows of bookshelves bathed in a soft, illuminating glow. "Look, her quest for knowledge never ended," John observed, noting Helena's mixed emotions. Even in death, her mother's pursuit of wisdom persisted. However, John's expression turned to one of confusion. His system had not indicated this was Ravenclaw's Chamber of Secrets. Chapter 58, Supreme Wisdom, Mother. Despite its often unobtrusive presence, the small transparent system usually does an excellent job of providing timely reminders. However, upon entering the secret room, John noticed the absence of the system's usual alert. This silence led him to conclude that he was not in Ravenclaw's secret chamber, as he had initially thought. Approaching the bookshelf, John selected a book, expecting it to be just another tome of magic. To his surprise, upon opening it, he found it densely packed with notes. Each subsequent book he opened revealed the same. They were all annotated by Rowena Ravenclaw herself. The knowledge within these pages had been meticulously verified and practiced by Ravenclaw, with any errors corrected. The sheer volume of work reflected Ravenclaw's vast reserves of knowledge across various fields, reaching an astonishing level. Helena, though a ghost, possessed the ability to turn the pages. The sight of her mother's handwriting made her feel as though she was trapped in a cage of endless knowledge rather than standing before a bookshelf. She moved slowly from one bookshelf to the next, a mix of awe and sadness in her heart. "You've proven that you're smarter than me," Helena said with a self-deprecating laugh. "I never discovered this place." "Is it that you did not, or that you were unwilling?" John asked, pointing to his heart. For nearly 1,000 years, Helena had explored every corner of Hogwarts. "You hate this painting," John observed as he replaced a book on the shelf. "Or perhaps you're afraid. Afraid of confronting such a reality?" "Yes, I'm afraid," Helena admitted, her voice tinged with sorrow. In her eyes, knowledge was indeed the most important thing. She pulled out a book and glanced at the notes. "There's no mention of me in it." As the daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, she felt overshadowed by the pursuit of knowledge. "This proves everything," Helena said. "Not necessarily," John countered, gesturing towards the end of the small library. Helena followed his gaze, and there a painting hung. The moment she saw it, her eyes widened in disbelief. The woman in the painting, with long black hair and an intoxicating beauty, exuded wisdom that commanded respect. Without her usual crown of wisdom, she looked at Helena with love. "Mother," Helena whispered. Rowena Ravenclaw, one of the founders of Hogwarts, was immortalized in this painting. Seeing her daughter, Rowena smiled warmly. "I've been waiting for you, Helena." "Wait for me?" Helena was puzzled. "Helena," John said, joining her side and looking at the painting. "I believe this is you." Beside Ravenclaw in the painting, a girl, delicate as a doll, appeared. She hid behind Ravenclaw, looking out fearfully at Helena. It was a younger version of herself, the little Helena she had distanced herself from. "Have you been taking care of her?" Helena asked, her emotions complex. After being driven away, the younger Helena had sought refuge in this painting. Ravenclaw had been caring for her daughter, even within the confines of the painting. At that moment, Helena's eyes seemed to glisten with unshed tears. Could ghosts cry? John looked at the painting and said, "The real secret chamber must be behind this painting." "Do you know the password?" Helena asked. "Treasure," the younger Helena in the painting responded crisply. "The password is correct." That was the word Helena remembered from her childhood, a word Ravenclaw had often used. To Helena, it had always meant that she was her mother's treasure, her most precious thing. The painting slowly swung open, revealing a door. The sight of the familiar door made Helena hesitant to approach. John walked forward, his hand reaching out to gently push the door open. Beyond it lay a room filled with childish toys, a dresser fit for a princess, and a cradle under a ceiling painted with stars. The walls were adorned with portraits of the younger Helena. Ding Ravenclaw's Chamber of Secrets, discovered. John paused at the doorway, deep in thought. "I've been meaning to tell you," Rowena's portrait said as she entered the room. "You are my most precious treasure." Rowena looked at Helena with love. You surpass everything I have learned, Helena." These words, coming from the embodiment of supreme wisdom, held a profound significance. They revealed a truth that knowledge, while vast and valuable, paled in comparison to the love between a mother and her daughter. In the hallowed halls of Ravenclaw, a profound lesson awaited, the essence of motherhood and the capacity to love. Helena navigated through the remnants of her past, each object a testament to her journey, from her babbling infancy to her eventual flight from home. Her disdain for portraiture stemmed from childhood, a time when her mother's artistic endeavors seemed to overshadow her own existence. Each portrait captured a different facet of Helena, the studious, the mischievous, the evolving. Yet, it was the final painting that halted her in her tracks, depicting her mother, the esteemed Ravenclaw, standing beside her. "I'm sorry, Helena." Ravenclaw's voice broke the silence, her image shimmering with a silvery light. "Only after you left did I realize that true wisdom lies in loving you." Tears, ethereal and gleaming like scattered moonlight, streamed down Helena's cheeks. John, witnessing this spectral display, reached out, marveling at their intangible beauty. "It was my folly," Helena sobbed, regret lacing her words. "My jealousy, my anger, they were misplaced. I should have seen you for who you truly are." "There's no fault in your feelings," Ravenclaw reassured, stepping out from the canvas, her form aglow with a soft silvery radiance. Embracing her daughter, she whispered, "You are my treasure, my beloved daughter." As mother and daughter shared this timeless embrace, John watched in awe, realizing this was no ordinary portrait, but a manifestation of the soul. How Ravenclaw managed to preserve her essence for such a moment puzzled him, yet it reminded him of Gryffindor's enduring consciousness. Releasing Helena, Ravenclaw turned to John, her curiosity piqued. "Are you a Ravenclaw?" "Ahem. Actually, I'm from Slytherin," John admitted, feeling slightly awkward under her gaze. Ravenclaw's surprise quickly gave way to a knowing smile. "It seems you possess not only exceptional wisdom, but, more importantly, the capacity to love." The irony was not lost on John. Ravenclaw, who esteemed wisdom above all, had concealed the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets behind a seemingly unrelated painting. Yet, in her pursuit of wisdom, she had plunged into the depths of maternal love, awaiting her daughter's return. Helena, trying to discreetly wipe away her tears, caught John's attention. He considered the unique properties of ghostly tears, pondering their potential for study. "You carry my essence," Ravenclaw noted, alluding to her diadem in John's possession. "Crown?" Helena reacted with surprise. John, feigning ignorance, confirmed, "Yes, Ravenclaw's diadem is with me, but I'm afraid I cannot return it." "That's unnecessary," Ravenclaw dismissed, her focus not on the diadem, but on the memories it held. "You've come here, and for that, you deserve a reward." John glanced at the surrounding bookshelves, assuming the vast collection was the reward. Ravenclaw, however, deemed it insufficient. With a wave of her hand, the books merged, leaving only one behind. This book, she explained, contained the culmination of her wisdom. As Ravenclaw's form began to fade, she imparted one final piece of wisdom to Helena. "Learn to forgive yourself. Learn to love yourself. This is the truest wisdom." With those parting words, Ravenclaw vanished, leaving behind the silver-covered book, which flew into John's hands. This tome encapsulated a lifetime of knowledge, a gift beyond measure. "I suppose I should say thank you," Helena remarked, her spirits lifted despite her mother's departure. "Thank you, John Wick." John, holding the precious book, smiled warmly, acknowledging the profound journey they had shared. "I should thank you as well, Helena," he said, their smiles reflecting a mutual understanding and appreciation. In this moment, it became clear that both had found what they were seeking. Chapter 579, The Welfare Institute Administrator. "Welcome to the Continental Hotel," greeted the front desk attendant, a gentleman with meticulously styled black hair. His smile was warm and inviting as he addressed the newcomer. "How may I assist you today, sir?" The man with the suitcase returned the smile, albeit a bit awkwardly, as he fumbled with his luggage. "Just one moment, please." He eventually extracted a recruitment document from his suitcase and handed it over. "I'm here in response to the job advertisement." "Mr. Gregg," the receptionist acknowledged, scanning the document briefly before nodding in confirmation. He then signaled to a passing waiter. "Dickie, would you kindly escort this gentleman to the manager?" Dickie nodded, gesturing for Gregg to follow him. Once they had departed, the receptionist made a quick phone call. "Boss, your applicant has just arrived." "Understood, Fu," came the reply before the line went dead. Almost immediately, another customer approached the desk, panting heavily and visibly distressed, with blood stains on his clothes and a fresh wound on his hand. Without missing a beat, Afu greeted him with a smile. "How may I be of service?" "I need help disposing of a body," the man whispered urgently, his eyes darting around the lobby in panic. The hotel's patrons seemed indifferent to his plea, some even sharing amused glances. Afu, however, maintained his composure, inviting the man closer with a gesture. As the man leaned in, Afu swiftly grabbed him by the head and slammed it onto the counter, a dagger pressed against his neck. "Please, don't kill me," the man begged, his voice breaking in terror. Afu's smile vanished as he leaned in, his tone stern yet polite. "This is a hotel, not a refuge for thugs seeking to clean up their messes. Now I suggest you leave before I resort to using the pistol in my drawer." With that, he released the man, who scrambled out of the hotel in a panic. Afu calmly wiped his hands with a tissue, reflecting on the naivety of some who mistook the hotel for a lawless haven. After ensuring the lobby was secure, Afu prepared for the inevitable retaliation. Sure enough, the disgraced man returned, firing a pistol into the air in a fit of rage. However, before he could utter another word, Afu neutralized the threat with a precise shot. Once the situation was handled, Afu calmly ordered one cleanup, and within minutes, the evidence of the altercation was erased, restoring the lobby's pristine condition. Meanwhile, Greg, escorted by Dickie, couldn't help but express his astonishment. "I never expected to find myself applying for a position in such a unique establishment." Unfortunately, Dickie remained stoic, offering no response. Suddenly, Greg paused, clutching his stomach. "I apologize, but I think my breakfast sandwich wasn't quite right." Understanding the hint, Dickie escorted him to the restroom and waited outside. Inside, Greg retrieved a covert communication device hidden in his shoe. "I've spotted at least 13 wanted criminals in the lobby," he reported. "Are you sure it's wise for me to infiltrate this place? It's controlled by a man who holds significant power over London's underworld." The chapter ends with Greg questioning his mission, hinting at the complex and dangerous world he's about to navigate within the Continental Hotel. Is it really possible that someone who operates in the shadows and owns a dozen hotels suddenly becomes merciful? The voice on the other end of the line questioned skeptically. "Watson Wake is far from ordinary. Do you recall his inexplicable disappearance?" The voice continued, its tone laced with intrigue. "None of us could trace his movements. There's no underground passage near his last known location. He surfaced at a station hundreds of miles away without any prior indication, returning with his wife, all smiles," the person added, emphasizing the mystery surrounding Watson. "This man possesses an exceptionally sharp intellect. You must seize this opportunity. It's our best chance to uncover Watson Wake's secrets. The UK has suppressed an incident involving him. You've seen the report. An explosion attributed to a gas leak? But there wasn't even a gas pipeline in that vicinity," the voice exclaimed, highlighting the discrepancies in the official story. "Your task is to investigate him thoroughly, understand his intentions, and become someone he trusts implicitly," the voice instructed. "What about the wanted criminals?" Greg inquired, seeking clarification. "The government has struck a deal with them to preserve the underground order. Certain matters can be overlooked," came the response. "Understood," Greg replied, though he pondered whether his superiors would still support him if they knew the risks involved with getting close to Watson Wake. After ending the call, Greg exited the restroom, resuming his usual demeanor. He playfully chided Dickie about leaving his sandwich until the next day. They soon found themselves in a room on the hotel's top floor. Upon entering, Greg's gaze immediately fixed on a man seated on the couch, a man of profound presence, idly spinning a delicate golden ball between his fingers. "Watson Wake," Greg silently mused, recalling the dossier that had arrived at the bureau upon the establishment of the hotel. This man, once a mere shadow in the financial world, had carved out an empire in the gray areas of legality, using bold and ruthless tactics to eliminate any opposition. Before his ascent, no one could have imagined a financial manager capable of such deeds, not even the once dominant Wallace family. Greg couldn't help but wonder about Watson's current schemes. Was he aiming to further consolidate his hold on the underworld, planning an assault on a sovereign nation, or perhaps meddling in political affairs? The mere presence of Watson intensified Greg's sense of unease. "Oh, Dickie, and you must be Greg," Watson said, his thoughts momentarily on dinner plans before greeting his new recruit with a warm handshake. Despite Greg's internal turmoil, he managed to maintain a facade of eagerness, indistinguishable from any other job applicant. Greg's apprehension grew as Watson's demeanor betrayed no hint of his notorious background. He seemed so ordinary, almost benevolent. If I didn't know better, I'd mistake him for a kind-hearted middle-class citizen, Greg thought, alarmed by Watson's seamless performance. Feigning surprise, Greg remarked, "Hi, Mr. Wake. I didn't expect to meet you here." "This is my hotel," Watson replied, his gaze fixed on Greg, who then promptly presented his meticulously prepared resume. Watson perused it with a nod of approval, recognizing the effort that had gone into crafting such a flawless document. "The only question," Watson began after setting aside the resume, scrutinizing Greg, "is whether you can keep secrets." Greg's heart skipped a beat, fearing his cover might be blown. Yet he managed a calm smile, replying, "I believe I can, Mr. Wake." Watson's intense gaze felt as though it could pierce through Greg's facade, putting him on edge. "You're hired," Watson declared with a laugh, adding, "I assume you're aware of the job's unique nature." "Indeed, it's unusual, but I trust you'll keep the specifics to yourself," Watson said with a mysterious smile. "Welcome aboard. I hope you find the work fulfilling." "I'm sure I will, boss," Greg responded, his smile masking the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind as Watson warmly patted his hand. Greg glanced down at his polished leather shoes, offering a casual remark, "Your shoes are quite nice." Yet, he couldn't help but add, "However, it might be wise to avoid indulging in such luxurious leather shoes." He recalled the other man's modest income. Affording such footwear would likely require months of savings, a decision that seemed imprudent to Greg. Meanwhile, Greg's comment left him holding his breath, a tension building within. Upon exiting the room, Greg released the breath he had been holding, a wave of relief washing over him as he wiped the sweat from his brow. He pondered over Watson's keen observation, suspecting that it was a subtle hint at his undercover status. Indeed, for someone who chooses to live so openly, he must anticipate the attention of secret agents, Greg mused. Leaving the hotel behind, Greg drove towards the orphanage, his mind racing with thoughts. "You're aware I'm an agent, yet you confidently send me there. What sort of assurance do you possess?" he questioned aloud, a mix of curiosity and apprehension in his voice. As he arrived, Greg's gaze lifted to the building before him, which bore more resemblance to a school than an orphanage. The sign read Silver Hand Angel Welfare Home, a name that hinted at both care and protection. The facade of the building, coupled with the name, painted a picture of a sanctuary, a place where the vulnerable could find refuge and perhaps even a touch of grace. Greg's initial skepticism began to wane, replaced by a growing intrigue about the confidence that Watson had displayed and the true nature of the welfare home that stood before him. Chapter 580, Changes in Europe and the Missing Minister of Magic. John's father had taken responsibility for the orphanage, and according to John, his father was managing well. It was a troubling time, with many children who should have been in school now finding themselves in Nocturne Alley instead. "How many orphaned children are we dealing with?" John inquired of Tang Mi, who had been tasked with resettling these Muggle children. The process was clear. Those who could be reunited with their parents would have their memories erased before being sent back. Those whose parents could not be found, or who had perished, were temporarily housed in Nocturne Alley. The construction of the orphanage, facilitated by Tang Mi in collaboration with Yinshou Fengshan Construction, was a race against time. The concept of orphanages was virtually unknown in the wizarding world, so they modeled it after a Muggle school for lack of a better reference. According to our records, there are a total of 35 Muggle children. 13 of them have been disabled due to experiments, and 7 wizard children have lost their parents to persecution, Tang Mi reported. John, deeply affected by these numbers, pondered the situation while absent-mindedly rubbing his locket. "The land my father purchased should be sufficient," he mused. After a moment of contemplation, he made his decision. "Arrange for the Muggle children's memories to be erased," he instructed, "and send the wizard children to the Little Wizard Foundation for care." "Yes, my lord," Tangmi acknowledged, preparing to carry out the orders. However, John added, "After you've taken the children to the orphanage, seal the fireplace." He was adamant about preventing any Muggle child from accidentally using the Flu network to return. Tangmi proceeded with the delicate task of erasing the Muggle children's memories, a process fraught with risk as even a minor mistake could cause brain damage. John decided to personally oversee the operation, entrusting the children to Johnny Silverhands in the meantime. The children, huddled together in fear, yet showing signs of recovery after their stay at Silverhand, were curious about their surroundings. "Everyone, please line up and stay still," Tangmi instructed, maintaining order. John approached with a white wand in hand, facing the children who were oblivious to what was about to happen. Before proceeding with the memory erasure, he cast another spell, a silvery white light enveloping the room. "Should any of you encounter trouble, this will alert me," he said in a low, hoarse voice, casting a spell in an arcane language. A diamond-shaped logo appeared on the backs and shoulders of each child, a magical safeguard to protect them from future harm. With the protective measures in place, John performed the memory erasure spell. "Obliviate," he intoned, and a white light flashed. The children blinked, their memories of past traumas gone, leaving them with a sense of belonging to the orphanage where they had made new friends and shared laughter. Greg, entering the orphanage, was greeted by the sound of children's laughter. Peering into a classroom, he dropped a box in surprise at the sight of the children, some of whom bore the marks of experimentation. "Watson Wake," he muttered, realizing the gravity of his mission. The evidence suggested these children were survivors of a sinister experiment, and the man responsible, outwardly benevolent, was a monster in disguise. Greg's resolve hardened, though he knew he couldn't act alone. Meanwhile, Watson, oblivious to the dark role he played in the children's stories, sneezed and joked about his son thinking of him. Content with thoughts of his family, he remained unaware of the growing resolve to bring him to justice. After a long day at work, Watson returned home with a cheerful demeanor, eager to spend time with his family. Upon entering the house, he was greeted by the endearing sight of his daughter, Ariana, fixated on the beef resting on the chopping board, while their family cat, Kiki, ched on, drooling. Watson couldn't resist the urge to affectionately ruffle Ariana's hair, a gesture she allowed, knowing her father had brought her favorite ice cream. "Try not to give her too much sugar," Mrs. Wick cautioned, eyeing the ice cream in Watson's hand. "We need to watch out for her teeth." Watson, enjoying his own ice cream, nodded in agreement, acknowledging his wife's wisdom. Seizing the moment, Mrs. Wick asked Ariana, "Would you like to learn how to cook with me?" She then playfully teased Watson, boasting, "John loves my cooking the most." The mention of her father's preference was enough to pique Ariana's interest, prompting her to join her mother by the stove. Mrs. Wick skillfully diced tomatoes, pineapples, and oranges, then expertly combined them with minced meat and fresh shrimp in the pot, creating a vibrant dish she proudly named fruit-colored tangerine fried rice. Ariana, sneaking a taste, was visibly moved by the explosion of sweet and sour flavors, so much so that a mysterious black aura briefly emanated from her eyes, only to be retracted by the shimmering bracelet on her wrist. Confused yet intrigued, Ariana asked, "Does Dad really like this?" Mrs. Wick confidently affirmed, "He loves it the most." In a ceremonial gesture, Mrs. Wick retrieved a sealed cookbook from the cabinet, marking a significant moment in the Wick household's history. Meanwhile, John Wick felt an inexplicable shiver, unaware of the familial scene unfolding at home. With the children away and no classes to attend, he extinguished the blue flame in the fireplace with a flick of his wand, contemplating his next move. In the empty charms classroom, Professor Flitwick noted John's absence, while Riddle, John's loyal black long-eared owl, awaited instructions. Unlike Basil, who was known for his domineering presence in the owlery, Riddle showed a softer side around John. Tangmi, delivering the financial report, informed John of the werewolf community's recent expansion and the establishment of a new branch in France. However, a minor resistance had emerged. Despite a temporary halt in expansion causing slight financial setbacks, the silver hand industry, under John's leadership, continued to garner widespread attention. Dharma Alex Belby, an old friend and rival in potion-making, expressed his eagerness to see John, a rising star, shine on the global stage. Despite a hint of jealousy over John consulting Slughorn for potion expertise, Dharma Alex's letter was filled with anticipation for their collaboration against the blood curse. The arrival of an owl with a newspaper momentarily disrupted their correspondence. The headlines detailing Grindelwald's activities in Poland and the mysterious disappearance of the German Minister of Magic wiped the smile from John's face. The connection between these events and Grindelwald was unclear, yet John couldn't shake off the feeling that they were somehow intertwined. John was perplexed by Grindelwald's recent maneuvers. He had harbored suspicions that the German Minister of Magic might be in cahoots with Grindelwald. However, with the minister now missing and Grindelwald's sudden departure to Poland, John's theories seemed to crumble. The question that loomed in his mind was whether Grindelwald was planning an aggressive move on Poland. This development had sparked a fervent debate across Europe. As he pondered these events, another newspaper landed in front of him. John scanned the headline, which read, "Shockwaves through Europe. The International Federation of Wizards convenes a summit in response to Grindelwald's rise and the election of a new president." The article detailed the wizarding world's growing concern over Grindelwald's actions and the implications for international magical cooperation. The disappearance of the German Minister of Magic had added a layer of urgency to the situation, prompting the International Federation of Wizards to take decisive action. The summit aimed to address the immediate threat posed by Grindelwald and to solidify the global wizarding community's stance against his ambitions. The election of a new president was also a critical agenda item, signaling a potential shift in the Federation's leadership and strategy. John reflected on the gravity of the situation. The wizarding world stood at a crossroads, with Grindelwald's shadow looming large over Europe. The outcome of the summit and the direction taken by the new president would undoubtedly shape the course of events to come. As he folded the newspaper, John realized that the stakes were higher than ever. The need for unity and decisive action was paramount, lest Grindelwald's dark vision for the future become a reality.